Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying my videos, please click the like button. It is the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. The black stream, like a sinister fissure in the fabric of reality, flows through the narrative, consuming light and hope. Its dark waters, woven from the very essence of night, awaken a deep, primal fear in the heart. The author masterfully depicts this eerie stream as a symbol of the unknown, a harbinger of the unexplored and the terrifying aspects of life. Every glance at the stream reveals reflections of nightmares long forgotten, its surface an inky void that beckons and repels simultaneously. The air around it is heavy with a foreboding sense of dread, as if the stream itself whispers ancient secrets that should never be known. The protagonist feels an inexplicable pull towards it, a morbid curiosity mixed with a paralyzing terror, knowing that to approach the stream is to confront the darkest corners of the human psyche. The narrative crescendos as the protagonist encounters an unknown woman by the black stream. Her presence alone triggers a cascade of panic, an intense wave of fear that grips every muscle, every thought. The author vividly describes the physical manifestations of this terror, a heart pounding like a war drum, blood rushing in the ears, each beat a reminder of mortality. The protagonist's breath becomes shallow and rapid, a desperate attempt to calm the rising tide of anxiety. His hands tremble uncontrollably, cold sweat trickling down his spine. The woman's eyes, dark and inscrutable, seem to bore into his soul, unearthing buried fears and unspoken dread. Each step she takes towards him feels like a step closer to the abyss, her presence an embodiment of the unknown horrors the black stream represents. The protagonist's mind races, filled with fragmented thoughts and a frantic need to escape, but his body remains frozen, trapped in the grip of sheer panic. In the heart of the town, whispered among hushed voices and shadowed alleyways, there exists a chilling urban legend about the black stream. This tale, passed down through generations, is shrouded in an eerie mystique, each retelling adding layers of dread and supernatural imagery. It is said that the black stream appears only under the cloak of night, its waters dark as obsidian and colder than the deepest winter frost. Those who have seen it speak of its unnaturally still surface, reflecting the moon in distorted, unsettling shapes. The legend tells of a time long ago when a great calamity befell the town. A series of tragic events, mysterious disappearances, and inexplicable deaths plagued the townsfolk. Desperate for answers, the elders sought out the wisdom of a reclusive seer. She revealed that the black stream was not of this world, but a rift to a realm of lost souls and forgotten nightmares. According to her prophecy, anyone who gazed too long into its depths would be drawn into its current, their soul forever bound to the darkness. Mystical images haunt the story's spectral figures that hover near the stream, their faces twisted in silent agony whispers that echo through the night, carrying secrets of the damned. On nights when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, some claim to see ghostly lights dancing along the stream's edge, flickering in and out of existence like the souls trapped within. The atmosphere surrounding the legend is palpably tense. The air grows colder, and an oppressive silence falls whenever the black stream is mentioned. Children are warned to stay indoors after dusk, lest they become the stream's next victims. The townspeople avoid the area where the stream is said to flow, its very name evoking a sense of unease and terror. This legend casts a long shadow over the town, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. It serves as a warning and a testament to the horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of understanding. Each generation adds its own encounters and sightings, perpetuating the legend and ensuring that the black stream remains a source of fear and fascination, an eternal part of the town's dark history. As the protagonist delves deeper into the enigma of the black stream, he finds himself in heated discussions with Tanya, a friend who shares his fascination but with a more skeptical eye. These debates, crackling with tension and differing perspectives, reveal the profound rift in their views of the world and the supernatural. One night, they sit in a dimly lit room, shadows flickering on the walls from the single candle burning between them. The air is thick with unease as they argue. The protagonist, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, insists that the legend holds a kernel of truth. He recounts the chilling testimonies of townspeople who have seen the stream, their eyes haunted by memories of spectral figures and whispering voices. He speaks of the ancient prophecy, the cursed seer, and the undeniable sense of dread that permeates the area around the stream. Tanya, however, crosses her arms and leans back, her face set in a skeptical frown. She challenges him, questioning the reliability of these accounts. People love to embellish, she says, her voice steady but carrying a hint of exasperation. A trick of the light, collective hysteria, or even just wild imaginations fueled by fear. There is no concrete evidence, nothing that can't be explained by rational thought. Their arguments intensify, each trying to sway the other. The protagonist cites ancient texts and historical records that mention the Black Stream, using them to bolster his belief in the supernatural aspects of the legend. He describes the eerie feeling he experienced when near the supposed location of the stream, a bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep into his very soul. Tanya counters with logic and science. She points out inconsistencies in the stories, the lack of physical proof, and the possibility of natural explanations for the strange phenomena. Fear can play tricks on the mind, she argues. What you felt could easily be a result of suggestion or even a drop in temperature due to natural causes. Their discussion goes deeper, touching on their fundamental beliefs about the world. The protagonist believes in the unseen, the possibility of other realms and forces beyond human comprehension. Tanya, on the other hand, stands firm in her belief in science and reason, viewing the world through a lens of skepticism and empirical evidence. As the night wears on, neither side concedes. The candle flickers and finally goes out, plunging them into darkness. In that moment, the protagonist feels the weight of the unknown pressing down on him, while Tanya remains a silhouette of unwavering doubt. Their debate, unresolved, mirrors the larger conflict between belief and skepticism, fear and reason, and the enduring mystery of the Black Stream. The characters in the story experience intense emotions when confronted with unusual situations or when they hear unexpected tales. One evening, as the protagonist and Tanya sit by the fire, a sudden knock on the door startles them. They open it to find an old woman, her face etched with deep lines and her eyes clouded with memories of a bygone era. She introduces herself as Agatha, a longtime resident of the town with stories that few dare to recount. Agatha's voice trembles with age and emotion as she begins her tale. She speaks of a night many years ago when she and a group of friends dared to approach the Black Stream. As they stood by its eerie waters, they saw a figure emerging from the darkness, its form shifting and indistinct. The figure reached out a skeletal hand, and a voice, neither human nor animal, whispered their names. Agatha's friends fled, but she was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a terror so profound it seemed to freeze her very soul. The figure vanished, leaving her with a single word burned into her mind: cursed. As Agatha speaks, the room grows colder, the shadows deepening. The protagonist and Tanya listen, their skepticism and belief colliding in the face of this chilling first-hand account. Tanya's usual composure begins to crack, her eyes widening with a mix of fear and astonishment. The protagonist feels his heart pounding, his own fear mirrored in Agatha's trembling hands. The old woman continues, recounting how each of her friends who had seen the figure met with tragic fates. One by one, they disappeared or were found dead under mysterious circumstances, their faces twisted in expressions of abject terror. Agatha herself has lived in constant fear, haunted by nightmares and the knowledge that the Black Stream's curse is real. The atmosphere in the room is thick with tension. Tanya, struggling to maintain her skeptical stance, asks Agatha how she can be sure that what she saw was real and not a product of fear or imagination. Agatha's response is immediate and filled with conviction. She describes the physical sensations, the icy touch of the figure's hand, the palpable presence of evil that cannot be explained away by rational thought. The protagonist feels a chill run down his spine. His mind races as he tries to reconcile Agatha's vivid descriptions with his own experiences and fears. The old woman's story brings a new depth to the legend, one that cannot be easily dismissed. When Agatha finally leaves, the room is left in a heavy silence. The fire, once warm and comforting, now casts long, sinister shadows on the walls. Tanya and the protagonist sit in stunned silence, their minds reeling from the encounter. Tanya's skepticism is visibly shaken, her face pale and her hands trembling. The protagonist feels a surge of vindication, but also a deeper fear. knowing that the legend of the Black Stream is more than just a story. As they try to process what they've heard, they realize that the line between reality and legend has blurred. The shock and astonishment linger, leaving them with a sense of dread and an urgent need to uncover the truth about the Black Stream and the dark forces that surround it. Driven by an insatiable curiosity and a need to uncover the truth, the protagonist embarks on a quest to investigate the legend of the Black Stream. Armed with a notebook, flashlight, and a determination that borders on obsession, he dives into the town's archives, seeking out old records, forgotten diaries, and any scraps of information that might shed light on the dark mystery. Days turn into nights as he pores over ancient texts, his eyes straining in the dim light of the library. Each discovery, no matter how small, fuels his determination. He learns of strange occurrences that align with the sightings of the Black Stream's sudden disappearances, inexplicable deaths, and accounts of ghostly figures appearing near the stream's rumored location. The pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together, forming a picture that is both fascinating and terrifying. His investigation leads him to interview the oldest residents of the town, those who have lived in its shadow for decades. Each story, each whisper of the stream, adds another layer to the legend. He visits the site where the stream is said to appear, feeling the oppressive air and the chill that seems to seep into his bones. The landscape itself seems to resist his presence, as if warning him to turn back. But he cannot. The need to know the truth outweighs his fear. Amid his relentless search, the protagonist finds himself wrestling with his own thoughts and emotions. In the quiet moments, when he is alone with his findings and the haunting silence of the night, his mind becomes a battleground of doubt, fear, and determination. Why am I so drawn to this, he questions himself, staring at the pages filled with hastily scribbled notes. What if Tanya is right, and all of this is just a product of overactive imaginations and old superstitions? He feels the weight of his skepticism pressing against his belief in the supernatural. The rational part of his mind urges him to abandon the quest, to chalk it up to folklore and forget the chilling tales. Yet, every strange encounter and eerie feeling he has experienced refuses to be dismissed. He recalls Agatha's trembling voice, the terror in her eyes as she recounted her story. There has to be something more, he insists to himself. These aren't just stories. Too many coincidences, too many shared experiences. But what am I missing? What connects it all? His thoughts often drift to the fear he felt standing by the Black Stream, the palpable sense of being watched by unseen eyes. Am I brave or just foolish, he wonders. This could be dangerous. What if I end up like those people in the stories, lost to the stream's curse? The thought sends a shiver down his spine, but his resolve remains unshaken. The protagonist grapples with the pull of the unknown, the thrill of the hunt for truth, and the creeping dread of what that truth might reveal. Is this worth the risk, he asks himself, yet knowing he cannot stop. The need to understand, to see beyond the veil of the legend, drives him forward. I have to know. For myself, for Tanya, for all those who have been touched by this darkness. These internal conflicts add depth to his character, painting a portrait of a man caught between rationality and belief, fear and courage. His journey becomes not just a physical investigation, but a profound exploration of his own psyche, a struggle to reconcile his fears with his need for answers. As he continues his quest, the boundary between reality and legend blurs ever further, leading him down a path from which there may be no return. The protagonist's journey through the eerie labyrinth of the Black Stream legend is also a journey through his own transformation. Growing up, he was a dreamer, lost in the pages of fantasy books and tales of heroism. The world was a playground of endless possibilities, where every shadow held a secret and every whisper of wind a promise of adventure. But as he delves deeper into the chilling mystery, he begins to grapple with a stark shift from these childhood fantasies to the harsh realities of adult life. The investigation forces him to confront the darker aspects of the world. Each story of tragedy, each piece of evidence he uncovers, strips away the innocent veneer through which he once viewed life. The comforting certainties of youth give way to the unsettling ambiguities of adulthood. He starts to realize that the world is not just a place of wonder, but also of danger, where unseen forces can shape destinies and the past can cast long shadows over the present. This transition is poignant and sobering. He reflects on the dreams he had as a child, the heroic deeds he imagined himself performing. I used to think the world was filled with magic and heroes. He muses, but now I see it's also filled with darkness and fear. The stories I loved were just that, stories. Reality is far more complex and far more frightening. His investigation into the Black Stream becomes a metaphor for this awakening. The legend, with its roots in real, tragic events, serves as a harsh reminder that life is not a fairy tale. The protagonist learns to navigate this new understanding, balancing the wonder of discovery with the weight of knowledge, ultimately finding a more nuanced, mature perspective on life. Parallel to this shift is his intense struggle with fear. The protagonist's encounter with the Black Stream legend is not just an external journey but an internal battle against his deepest anxieties. From the moment he first hears the tale, a cold tendril of fear wraps around his heart, tightening with every eerie detail and unsettling experience. The fear is palpable, an almost physical presence that shadows his every step. When he stands by the rumored location of the Black Stream, the chill in the air seeps into his bones, and he feels the oppressive weight of unseen eyes watching him. Why am I doing this, he asks himself, the tremor in his voice betraying the bravado he tries to muster. What if the stories are true? What if I can't escape this darkness? His nights are plagued by nightmares, twisted visions of the stream pulling him into its depths, the faces of the lost souls contorted in agony. He wakes in a cold sweat, the remnants of his dreams lingering like a sinister whisper. I can't let this fear control me, he thinks, trying to steady his racing heart. I have to face it, to understand it. Despite his fear, he presses on, driven by a need to uncover the truth. The internal struggle is intense, each step forward a battle against the urge to flee. He uses rationality as a shield, trying to explain away the unexplainable, but the legend's grip on his psyche remains strong. Fear is just a reaction, he tells himself repeatedly. It's not real. It's only powerful if I let it be. Yet the more he learns, the more the fear grows. The stories of those who vanished, the eerie sensations, the inexplicable occurrences all feed into his dread. He feels the weight of the unknown pressing down on him, the boundaries of his world closing in. But amidst the terror, a steely resolve forms. I won't let this break me, he decides. I will find the truth, no matter the cost. This internal battle with fear adds a rich layer of depth to his character, illustrating his courage and determination. It is a testament to his growth, showing how he grapples with his inner demons and emerges stronger, albeit more scarred. The legend of the Black Stream becomes not just a tale of supernatural horror, but a profound exploration of human resilience in the face of overwhelming fear. The protagonist's drive to unravel the mysteries of the Black Stream is fueled by an insatiable thirst for understanding. This is not merely a curiosity, but a profound, almost obsessive need to grasp the truth that lurks behind the legend. Armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and a resolve that borders on reckless, he delves into the murky depths of the town's history. He scours old newspapers, dusty tomes, and faded diaries, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that spans generations. Each new piece of information, no matter how small, is meticulously noted and cross-referenced. The more he uncovers, the more intricate and terrifying the web of the Black Stream becomes. He learns of strange occurrences, people disappearing without a trace, sudden deaths marked by expressions of sheer terror, and ghostly apparitions seen near the stream's edge. His search takes him beyond the town's archives to the very site of the legend. He ventures into the woods, guided by whispered directions and half-forgotten trails. The atmosphere grows thicker, the air colder, as he approaches the place where the Black Stream is said to flow. His heart pounds in his chest, but his determination drives him forward. I need to see it for myself, he thinks. I need to know what's real. As he stands by the dark, almost unnaturally still waters, a sense of dread washes over him. The stream seems to pulse with a life of its own, its surface reflecting shadows that shouldn't be there. He feels a shiver run down his spine, but he pushes past the fear, driven by a need to understand. There has to be an explanation, he tells himself, though the words feel hollow. Amidst his relentless pursuit of knowledge, the protagonist is plagued by a deep psychological turmoil. The encounter with the Black Stream legend stirs up a maelstrom of conflicting emotions and thoughts, creating an intense internal dialogue. Am I losing my mind, he wonders, staring at his notes scattered across the table. The rational part of his brain urges him to dismiss the legend as mere folklore, a series of coincidences amplified by fear and superstition. But another part, a darker, more primal part, cannot shake the sense of dread that has taken root in his soul. What if it's all true? What if I'm in over my head? Each new discovery brings a fresh wave of doubt and fear. He recalls Agatha's haunting tale, the terror in her eyes as she spoke of the black stream. Can so many people be wrong, he asks himself. Is it possible that there's something more to this, something beyond my understanding? His nights are restless, filled with nightmares and waking fears. He dreams of being pulled into the black stream, of shadowy figures whispering his name. He wakes in a cold sweat, the echo of those whispers lingering in the darkness of his room. I'm just scaring myself, he tries to rationalize, but the fear feels too real, too pervasive to ignore. During the day, he throws himself into his research, using the work as a shield against the creeping terror. But even as he uncovers more evidence, the conflict within him grows. Is it worth it, he questions. Am I risking my sanity for answers that might not even exist? The thought of giving up crosses his mind, but the idea of leaving the mystery unsolved is unbearable. I can't stop now, he resolves. I need to see this through, no matter the cost. This internal struggle is a constant companion, a shadow that mirrors his every step. The protagonist battles with his fear, his skepticism, and his need for answers, each emotion vying for dominance. His quest for knowledge becomes not just a search for the truth about the black stream, but a deeper exploration of his own psyche. In the end, it is this psychological conflict that gives the story its depth and tension. The protagonist's journey is as much about confronting his own fears and doubts as it is about uncovering the secrets of the black stream. It is a terrifying and transformative experience, one that leaves him forever changed, standing on the edge of understanding, peering into the abyss of the unknown. The black stream legend has always been a part of the protagonist's life, a shadowy presence lurking in the corners of his childhood. As a child, he was captivated by the tales spun by the older generation, stories whispered around campfires or told in hushed tones during stormy nights. These stories painted a picture of the black stream as a place of mystery and danger, a forbidden zone that both frightened and fascinated him. Now, as an adult, he finds himself standing on the very edge of those childhood fantasies, and a wave of nostalgia sweeps over him. He recalls the eager anticipation with which he and his friends would huddle together, listening to the spine-chilling tales. The nights were filled with the scent of pine and the crackle of the fire, the world beyond their circle fading away as the stories took hold. We were so brave then, he thinks, smiling wistfully, or at least we thought we were. He remembers the thrill of daring each other to venture closer to the supposed site of the black stream, the nervous laughter masking genuine fear. They never went far, of course, but the mere thought of those dark waters was enough to fuel their imaginations for weeks. I used to dream about finding it, he admits to himself. Back then, it seemed like the ultimate adventure. These memories add a poignant layer to his current quest. The sense of innocence and wonder he felt as a child contrasts sharply with the fear and determination he feels now. The black stream is no longer a distant, fantastical place, but a real, tangible threat that he must confront. This juxtaposition deepens his emotional experience, blending the nostalgia of childhood with the grim realities of adulthood. As the protagonist delves deeper into the mystery, he becomes acutely aware of the power of imagination. A chance encounter or a stray word is enough to trigger a cascade of memories and emotions, bringing the past rushing back with startling clarity. One afternoon, he runs into an old friend from those childhood days. They exchange pleasantries, and then the conversation turns to the black stream. Do you remember how we used to talk about finding it? His friend asks, a hint of the old excitement in his voice. The question opens a floodgate of recollections, the images of their youthful adventures flashing vividly in his mind. I do, he replies, feeling a bittersweet tug at his heart. It feels like a lifetime ago. These moments of reminiscence highlight the profound impact of imagination on his life. The stories and legends that once seemed like mere entertainment have left an indelible mark on his psyche, shaping his fears and desires. It's amazing how a simple story can stick with you, he reflects. How it can grow and change, becoming something much more significant over time. The protagonist also encounters a local elder, a woman known for her knowledge of the town's folklore. Her words, spoken with a quiet intensity, reignite the vivid images from his childhood. The Black Stream isn't just a place, she tells him. It's a part of our collective memory, a symbol of all that we fear and don't understand. Her words resonate deeply with him, underscoring the idea that the legend is more than just a tale. It is a powerful force that shapes perceptions and emotions. These experiences emphasize the importance of imagination in his life, illustrating how deeply stories can influence reality. The Black Stream, once a figment of his youthful dreams, has become a central part of his adult quest. His journey is as much about understanding this imaginative force as it is about uncovering the truth behind the legend. The interplay between memory and imagination adds richness to his narrative, blending the lines between past and present, reality and fantasy. In the end, the protagonist's exploration of the Black Stream is not just a physical journey but an emotional and psychological odyssey. It is a testament to the enduring power of imagination and the lasting impact of the stories we carry with us, shaping our fears, dreams, and ultimately, our understanding of the world. The story reaches a turning point as the author begins to realize that the safety and comfort of home offer a refuge from the terror and uncertainty that have haunted him. After the harrowing encounters with the Black Stream and the eerie legends surrounding it, the familiar surroundings of his house bring a sense of relief. It's here, within the walls of his sanctuary, that he begins to piece together his shattered confidence. The warm light filtering through the windows, the creak of the floorboards, and the mundane sounds of daily life start to ground him. These small, ordinary details act as anchors, pulling him back from the brink of panic and despair. Slowly, the suffocating grip of fear loosens. The shadows that seemed to stretch and writhe menacingly now appear less threatening under the reassuring glow of the household lamps. Each step through his home, each moment spent in the presence of the familiar, diminishes the dark hold of the stream's memory. He sits in his favorite chair, feeling the soft cushion beneath him, and lets out a long, trembling breath. The terror that once clawed at his sanity recedes, replaced by a cautious sense of normalcy. The ordeal with the Black Stream is not forgotten, but it no longer dominates his every thought. It becomes a dark memory, a story to be told in hushed tones, but no longer an immediate threat. In this moment of clarity, he understands that while the unknown may lurk outside, within these walls he is safe. The Black Stream and its horrors cannot reach him here. Despite this newfound sense of safety, the character cannot escape the stark realization of his reckless actions. The thrill and curiosity that once drove him to dip his hand into the Black Stream now seem foolhardy and perilous. As he examines his hand, now marked by the sinister touch of the stream, a chill runs down his spine. The dark water had clung to his skin, a tangible reminder of the unknown forces he had dared to provoke. His heart races as he recalls the moment he plunged his hand into the inky depths, driven by an inexplicable compulsion. The consequences of this rash act are immediate and unsettling. His hand feels cold and numb, an unnatural sensation that creeps up his arm. Panic sets in as he struggles to shake off the black water, but it clings stubbornly, as if alive with malevolent intent. The world around him blurs as fear takes hold. What has he awakened? What curse has he brought upon himself? In the days that follow, the sense of danger intensifies. Nightmares plague his sleep, vivid and terrifying, dragging him back to the edge of the stream. During the day, he finds himself glancing over his shoulder, expecting to see shadows moving just out of sight. His mind races with thoughts of what might have been unleashed. Each moment of unease is magnified into a potential symptom of some dark affliction. Isolation becomes his companion as he withdraws from friends and family, unwilling to expose them to whatever curse he might carry. He scours old books and ancient texts, desperate for a cure, a way to cleanse himself of the stream's touch. The story he once dismissed as mere legend now feels all too real. The Black Stream, with its whispers and promises of darkness, haunts him. The boundary between reality and nightmare blurs. The sense of safety that his home once provided begins to erode as he grapples with the consequences of his actions. In this state of distress, he realizes that the true horror lies not just in the encounter with the unknown, but in the lasting impact it has on his psyche. The black stream has marked him, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. The journey to reclaim his life and sanity will be long and fraught with challenges, as he confronts the fear and uncertainty that now define his existence. The character finds himself engulfed in a cloud of doubt and confusion, his mind swirling with questions that have no easy answers. The events that transpired at the black stream defy logic and understanding. He replays the moment in his head repeatedly, trying to make sense of it. Each recollection, however, only deepens his bewilderment. The memory of the dark water, the chilling whispers, and the palpable sense of dread clash violently with his need for rationality. His thoughts spiral, caught between the undeniable reality of what he experienced and the nagging suspicion that his mind might be playing tricks on him. As he sits alone in his dimly lit room, the usual comforts offer no solace. The familiar surroundings now feel alien, each shadow and creak a reminder of the unnatural encounter. He struggles to piece together a coherent narrative, but each attempt only leads to more questions. Why did he feel compelled to touch the stream? What was the dark presence that seemed to watch him? These questions gnaw at him, refusing to be silenced. Sleep eludes him, replaced by a restless, fevered contemplation. Every sound outside his window, every shift of light, sets his nerves on edge, amplifying his sense of vulnerability and confusion. The internal conflict intensifies as the character grapples with a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. He had captured the entire eerie episode on video, the footage serving as tangible proof of the inexplicable. Yet, when he shares the video with others, their reactions only deepen his turmoil. Friends and family view the footage with skepticism, attributing it to tricks of light or digital manipulation. They offer logical explanations, dismissing the dark stream as a mere illusion or a figment of his imagination. Their rationalizations clash violently with his vivid, visceral memory of the event, creating a rift between his personal experience and the external world's perception. This dissonance tears at his sanity. On one hand, he knows what he saw and felt the cold, inky water and the whispering shadows were undeniably real to him. On the other hand, the unanimous doubt from those around him plants seeds of uncertainty in his mind. Did he imagine it all? Was it a hallucination brought on by stress or fatigue? The discrepancy between his lived experience and the dismissive attitudes of others creates a mental tug-of-war. He oscillates between firm belief in the reality of his encounter and crippling self-doubt. To reconcile this internal conflict, he dives deeper into his investigation. He analyzes the video frame by frame, searching for any detail that might prove his account. He scours through online forums and obscure texts, seeking validation from others who might have faced similar phenomena. Yet each discovery, each piece of evidence, only adds layers to the mystery. The rational explanations provided by others fail to align with the unsettling certainty of his experience. As days turn into nights, his obsession with understanding the truth consumes him. His life becomes a series of anxious moments, where reality blurs with memory and fear. He isolates himself further, mistrusting the perceptions of those around him. The character stands at the precipice of madness, torn between two conflicting realities. His journey is one of relentless pursuit, not just of the truth behind the black stream, but of his own sanity amidst the chaos of doubt and cognitive dissonance. The character's fear of the unknown reaches its zenith as he encounters events and phenomena that defy explanation. Each moment spent near the black stream unravels the fabric of his reality, plunging him into a world where familiar rules no longer apply. The air around the stream is thick with a malevolent energy, making his skin prickle and his heart race. Every step he takes toward the dark water feels like a journey into an abyss, where unseen forces lurk just beyond the edge of perception. This fear is not just a passing sensation, it roots itself deep within his psyche, growing with each unexplained occurrence. The whispers he hears in the dead of night, the shadows that seem to move with a life of their own, and the chilling touch of the black water all feed into his terror. He is haunted by the sense that he has awakened something ancient and malevolent, something that watches and waits. The unknown becomes an ever-present specter, casting a long shadow over his every thought and action. His fear manifests physically. He starts at every noise, his body tense and ready to flee at a moment's notice. His sleep is plagued by nightmares where he is drawn into the black stream, sinking into its depths as unseen hands pull him down. Each morning he wakes in a cold sweat, the terror of the dream lingering even in the light of day. The line between his waking life and the nightmares begins to blur, and he finds himself constantly looking over his shoulder, expecting the unknown to pounce at any moment. As the character struggles with his fear, he also battles to discern the boundary between illusion and reality. The events surrounding the Black Stream challenge his perception of the world, making him question the very nature of existence. What is real, and what is merely a product of his increasingly fragile mind? This question torments him, creating a rift between his experiences and his understanding of reality. One night, as he reviews the footage of his encounter with the stream, he notices inconsistencies. The video captures the eerie glow of the water and the shadows that dance along its surface, but it also shows moments that he does not remember, figures moving in the background, whispers that the camera picks up but his ears did not. These discrepancies shake him to his core. Is the camera revealing a deeper truth, or is it distorting reality further? His interactions with others only add to his confusion. Friends and family dismiss his experiences, attributing them to stress or hallucinations. Their skepticism plants seeds of doubt in his mind. Is he losing his grip on reality? Is the Black Stream a figment of his imagination, a projection of his deepest fears and anxieties, or is it a genuine supernatural phenomenon that eludes rational explanation? To find answers, he turns to old texts and folklore, seeking any clue that might anchor his experiences in reality. He discovers stories of similar encounters, tales of streams that hold dark powers and spirits that guard them. These stories, however, offer little comfort. Instead, they deepen his sense of unease. The parallels between these ancient tales and his own experiences are too strong to ignore, yet they also suggest that he is dealing with forces beyond human understanding. His quest for truth becomes a desperate attempt to reclaim his sanity. He conducts experiments, visits the stream at different times, and tries to document every detail meticulously. Yet each visit only blurs the line between reality and illusion further. The stream seems to change, its behavior unpredictable and its appearance shifting. One moment it appears as a harmless trickle, the next as a swirling, malevolent force. In this state of perpetual uncertainty, the character's reality fractures. He begins to see glimpses of the Black Stream in everyday places: a puddle on the street, a dark corner of his room. These sightings plunge him into panic, as he can no longer trust his senses. The fear of the unknown and the blurring of reality and illusion intertwine, creating a labyrinth from which he cannot escape. His mind, caught in a web of terror and confusion, teeters on the brink of collapse. The character is relentlessly haunted by the psychological pressure stemming from his encounters with the Black Stream. The weight of the unknown presses down on him, invading every corner of his mind. His days are filled with a constant sense of dread, and his nights are plagued by vivid nightmares that blur the line between reality and dream. The once mundane aspects of his life now feel overshadowed by an impending sense of doom. Every creak of the floorboards and every flicker of the lights become a reminder of the dark presence he encountered. This unyielding stress begins to take a toll on his mental state. He becomes irritable and withdrawn, isolating himself from friends and family. The fear of being dismissed or labeled as delusional keeps him from sharing his experiences fully. His thoughts spiral into a whirlpool of anxiety, making it difficult to focus on anything other than the ominous memories of the Black Stream. The psychological pressure manifests physically. Too, he develops chronic headaches, his appetite diminishes, and sleep becomes a distant memory. He feels trapped in a cycle of fear and paranoia, unable to escape the clutches of his own mind. The psychological toll becomes a vicious cycle, where each moment of fear feeds into the next, creating an unending loop of terror and helplessness. The once clear distinction between reality and his fears blurs, leading him to question his sanity. The stress compounds with each passing day, and he begins to fear that he is losing his grip on reality entirely. In an effort to reclaim some semblance of peace, the character turns to various methods of self-soothing and overcoming his fears. Desperate to break free from the psychological stranglehold of the Black Stream, he seeks solace in practices that can calm his mind and body. He starts with deep breathing exercises, hoping to quell the anxiety that knots his stomach and tightens his chest. Sitting in a quiet room, he focuses on the rhythm of his breath, inhaling slowly through his nose and exhaling through his mouth. The deliberate, slow breathing helps to ground him, providing brief moments of clarity amidst the chaos in his mind. Each deep breath is a small victory, a step toward reclaiming control over his fraught nerves. To further combat the relentless stress, he takes to water therapy. Long, hot baths become a sanctuary for him, the warm water enveloping him in a comforting embrace. The soothing heat relaxes his tense muscles and calms his racing thoughts. As he sinks into the water, he imagines the dark, oppressive energy of the black stream being washed away, replaced by a sense of calm and safety. The gentle lap of the water against his skin provides a stark contrast to the cold, sinister touch of the stream, offering a physical reminder that he is safe in the present moment. In addition to these practices, he experiments with mindfulness and meditation. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, he closes his eyes and focuses on the present. He acknowledges each thought that drifts into his mind, but he does not dwell on them. Instead, he lets them pass, like leaves floating down a stream. This practice helps him to distance himself from the intrusive memories and fears, giving him brief respites from the constant mental turmoil. He also seeks comfort in routine. Establishing a daily schedule provides a sense of normalcy and control. He wakes up at the same time each day, eats regular meals, and dedicates time to hobbies and activities that he once enjoyed. These small, structured moments help to anchor him, providing stability in an otherwise tumultuous existence. Despite these efforts, the shadow of the black stream lingers, always at the edges of his consciousness. The psychological pressure is never fully gone, but these methods provide him with tools to manage it. Each moment of calm is a small victory, a testament to his resilience and determination to overcome the terror that threatens to consume him. The path to recovery is long and fraught with challenges, but with each breath, each moment of mindfulness, he takes a step toward reclaiming his life from the grasp of fear. The character becomes consumed by the need to understand what he has experienced. His mind races with thoughts, seeking to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that seems beyond comprehension. He spends hours in libraries and on the internet, poring over books and articles, desperate to find any mention of the black stream. He recalls every story and legend he has ever heard, hoping to uncover a clue that will make sense of the terrifying events he has endured. He remembers his grandmother's tales from his childhood, stories whispered in the dim glow of a fire about a cursed stream that swallowed the souls of the unwary. He digs into local folklore, unearthing forgotten narratives about mysterious disappearances and eerie sightings linked to the stream. Old newspaper clippings tell of villagers who claim to have seen dark waters and shadows moving with a life of their own. The accounts, though varied and fragmented, share a common thread of fear and the unknown. His search leads him to obscure forums and chat rooms where individuals discuss paranormal experiences. Here, he finds scattered references to streams that defy natural explanation, places where reality itself seems to unravel. He connects with others who describe encounters with dark waters that evoke a deep, primal terror. Their stories mirror his own in disturbing ways, yet they offer no concrete answers, only more questions. The legends and anecdotes suggest a history of dread and mystery, but none provide a clear explanation or a way to dispel the dark presence he feels. Despite his exhaustive efforts, the character is frustrated by the lack of concrete evidence. The stories and legends are compelling, but they are also elusive, filled with ambiguities and gaps. No historical records or scientific studies confirm the existence of the black stream. The accounts are always second-hand, passed down through generations or shared in hushed whispers among those who dare to believe. There are no photographs, no physical evidence, nothing that would stand up to scrutiny. This absence of confirmation gnaws at him, amplifying his sense of isolation. He is left questioning the reliability of his own senses. Did he really encounter something supernatural, or has his mind conjured up a terrifying illusion? The doubt is maddening. Each new story he uncovers is both a relief and a torment, relief that others have experienced something similar, and torment that these stories are as inconclusive as his own experience. Friends and family remain skeptical, attributing his obsession to stress or an overactive imagination. Their disbelief isolates him further, making him feel as though he is battling an unseen force alone. The lack of tangible evidence makes it difficult for him to argue his case, leaving him trapped between his undeniable fear and the rational explanations of those around him. In his search for answers, he becomes a shadow of his former self. The relentless pursuit of the truth consumes him, leaving little room for anything else. He loses track of time, his days blending into nights as he delves deeper into the mystery. Each dead end and each piece of folklore adds to his growing sense of despair. He yearns for a definitive explanation, something that will either validate his fears or dispel them entirely, but such clarity remains frustratingly out of reach. The character's journey is a descent into obsession, driven by a need to understand the inexplicable. The stories and legends offer tantalizing hints, but no definitive answers. The absence of confirmation leaves him in a liminal space, teetering on the edge of sanity as he struggles to reconcile his experiences with the elusive nature of the Black Stream. The search for an explanation becomes a dark odyssey, a quest for truth in a world where the lines between reality and myth blur ominously. One evening, as the character wanders the edge of town, lost in his thoughts and desperate for answers, he stumbles upon an old woman. She is sitting alone on a bench, her weathered face partially hidden by the shadows of the setting sun. Her eyes are sharp and penetrating, and they seem to see right through him. She wears a shawl decorated with a pattern of diamonds, which glint eerily in the dim light. Instinctively, he feels drawn to her, sensing that she might hold the key to the mystery that has consumed him. "You're searching for answers about the Black Stream, aren't you?" she asks, her voice a gravelly whisper that sends chills down his spine. Her question catches him off guard, yet he nods, unable to find his voice. She beckons him to sit, and with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, he complies. "I am known as the Diamond Lady," she begins, her eyes never leaving his. "I have lived in this town for many years, and I know more about the Black Stream than most. It is not a place to be trifled with. Those who venture too close often find themselves lost in ways they cannot fathom." She recounts stories of people who had encountered the stream before him, their lives forever altered by its dark presence. Some disappeared without a trace, while others were driven mad by the visions they saw. Her words are laced with a warning, and the gravity of her tone makes his heart pound. He listens intently, absorbing every word, yet the fear within him grows. What she describes aligns eerily with his own experiences, validating his fears but also deepening his sense of dread. As the Diamond Lady speaks, the character's emotions fluctuate wildly between fear and bewilderment. The unknown nature of the Black Stream and the ominous tales she shares make his skin crawl. Her words paint a picture of a force far beyond his comprehension, something ancient and malevolent that defies the natural order. He feels a cold sweat break out on his forehead, and his hands tremble slightly. "But why me?" he finally asks, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Why did it come for me?" The Diamond Lady's gaze softens slightly, and she shakes her head. "The stream does not choose its victims. It is a force that exists beyond our understanding, beyond our control. You were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But heed my warning, do not seek it out again. The more you try to understand it, the deeper its hold on you will become." Her words leave him reeling. He had hoped for answers, a way to break free from the fear that has gripped him, but instead he is left with more questions and an ominous warning. The realization that he is powerless against this force fills him with a profound sense of helplessness. The fear of the unknown tightens its grip on his mind, and he feels as though he is teetering on the edge of an abyss. As the Diamond Lady rises to leave, she places a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, there are some mysteries in this world that are better left unsolved. Protect yourself and those you care about by staying away from the Black Stream." With that, she disappears into the gathering darkness, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The encounter leaves a lasting impression on him, a mixture of fear and bewilderment that he cannot shake. He sits on the bench for a long time, staring into the night, grappling with the terrifying reality that some things are beyond human understanding and control. The Black Stream, with its dark allure and deadly secrets, remains a shadow over his life, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the known from the unknown. The encounter with the Diamond Lady leaves the character with an overwhelming sense of doom. Her words echo in his mind, reinforcing the idea that he is ensnared in a curse far beyond his understanding. The Black Stream's grip on his life feels like a tightening noose, and the sense of helplessness is suffocating. He begins to notice changes in himself, subtle at first, but growing more pronounced with each passing day. Shadows seem to follow him, whispers haunt his dreams, and a cold dread settles in his chest, refusing to let go. The curse feels inescapable, a malevolent force that has latched onto his soul. He sees it in the reflection of his own eyes, an inky darkness that wasn't there before. His thoughts are invaded by fragments of terrifying visions, memories of the black stream's sinister allure. Each attempt to ignore it only strengthens its hold, as if acknowledging it gives it power. He feels trapped, like a puppet in the hands of an unseen puppeteer, his strings pulled by the cursed waters that flow through his mind. Desperate to break free from the curse, the character embarks on a frantic quest for a solution. He begins with the logical route, seeking help from doctors and mental health professionals. He describes his experiences in clinical terms, hoping for a rational explanation. The doctors listen, nodding sympathetically, but their responses are frustratingly predictable. They attribute his symptoms to stress, anxiety, or perhaps a vivid imagination. They prescribe medications and recommend therapy, but none of these interventions touch the core of his torment. Frustrated and increasingly desperate, he turns to alternative sources. He visits spiritual healers, psychics, and occult practitioners, each promising a cure for his affliction. Some offer rituals, others charms or potions, but none provide lasting relief. Each attempt ends in disappointment, the sense of helplessness growing as the curse remains unbroken. He spends his savings on these futile efforts, driven by the hope that someone, somewhere, holds the key to his salvation. His friends and family grow concerned, watching his descent into obsession with alarm. They try to support him, but their inability to understand the depth of his fear and the reality of the curse only isolates him further. They suggest he is overreacting, that he should return to a normal routine, but they can't see the darkness that follows him, the curse that clings to him like a shadow. Their well-meaning advice feels like another layer of denial, pushing him deeper into despair. One evening, in a moment of desperation, he revisits the site of the black stream, hoping to confront it directly and perhaps find a way to reverse the curse. As he stands at the edge of the dark waters, he feels the weight of the Diamond Lady's warning. The stream is more than just a physical place, it's a gateway to something far darker and more powerful than he can comprehend. The sense of malevolence is palpable, and he realizes with chilling clarity that he is utterly powerless against it. Returning home, he feels the curse more acutely than ever. It invades every aspect of his life, a constant reminder of his helplessness. His attempts to escape or destroy it have only reinforced its power over him. The black stream is a curse that cannot be outrun, a shadow that cannot be dispelled by mere mortal means. He is left with a profound sense of despair, knowing that his life will never return to normal. The curse has become an inseparable part of his existence, a dark passenger that he can neither confront nor flee. Despite the overwhelming sense of doom and the countless failed attempts to find a solution, the character clings to a fragile thread of hope. He believes that somewhere, somehow, there must be a way to lift the curse and banish the black stream from his life. This hope drives him, even as despair nips at his heels, a constant companion in his dark journey. Each setback, each dead end, only fuels his determination to find an answer. He pushes forward, unwilling to surrender to the darkness that threatens to engulf him. Every new lead, every hint of a possible solution, becomes a beacon in the night. He delves deeper into obscure lore and forgotten rituals, sifting through the detritus of human belief in search of a glimmer of truth. His life becomes a relentless quest, an obsession that consumes him but also keeps him moving, a bulwark against the encroaching despair. In his most desperate moments, the character turns to the fringes of society, seeking help from self-proclaimed witches and practitioners of the dark arts. These are people who exist on the periphery, shunned or dismissed by mainstream society, yet they offer a sliver of hope that he cannot afford to ignore. He travels to remote villages and hidden enclaves, following whispers and rumors of those who might hold the power to break his curse. One night he finds himself in a dilapidated shack at the edge of a forgotten forest. The air is thick with the scent of burning herbs and wax, and the walls are adorned with talismans and sigils. The woman who greets him is old, her face lined with age and experience. She introduces herself as Baba Yelena, a name that conjures images of ancient, arcane knowledge. Baba Yelena listens to his story with a grave expression, her eyes narrowing as he describes the black stream and its relentless pursuit. She agrees to help, but her methods are as unsettling as the curse itself. She draws intricate patterns on the floor with salt and ash, lights candles of black and red, and chants in a language that feels older than time. The ritual is intense, a sensory overload that leaves him dizzy and disoriented. Despite her efforts, the black stream's presence remains. The ritual fails to lift the curse, and the old woman shakes her head, a mix of pity and frustration in her eyes. "The darkness you carry is powerful, more so than I have ever encountered," she says. "It is tied to you in ways that cannot be easily severed." Undeterred, he seeks out other witches, hoping that someone might possess the knowledge or power to help him. He meets a young woman who claims to have communed with spirits, a middle-aged man who boasts of ancient family secrets, and an enigmatic figure who insists on anonymity, known only as the seer. Each promises to help, each performs their own brand of magic, but none succeed in breaking the curse. These encounters leave him exhausted and disheartened, but not defeated. Each failure chips away at his resolve, yet the hope that keeps him going never fully extinguishes. He learns to draw strength from the act of searching itself, finding solace in the idea that his efforts are not in vain, even if they do not yield immediate results. The journey becomes as important as the destination, a testament to his refusal to succumb to the darkness. Through it all, the character's determination hardens into an unyielding resolve. He will not stop, will not rest, until he finds a way to rid himself of the black stream's curse. The path is fraught with obstacles and littered with the remnants of shattered hopes, but he pushes on, driven by the belief that there must be an answer, a solution hidden somewhere in the shadows of this terrifying mystery. Despite the many promises of assistance, the character's quest to rid himself of the black stream's curse leads him to the doorstep of a renowned elderly healer, known simply as Grandmother. She is whispered about in hushed tones, spoken of as a last resort for those with no other hope. With a heart heavy with anticipation and dread, he approaches her humble abode, a small, weathered cottage at the edge of an ancient forest. The interior of the cottage is dimly lit, filled with the aroma of dried herbs and old wood. The grandmother, a frail yet commanding presence, listens intently to his tale, her wise eyes reflecting years of knowledge and sorrow. She agrees to help, her voice carrying the weight of a promise born from countless successful healings. However, as she begins her ritual, her demeanor shifts. The air thickens with a palpable tension. She abruptly stops, her eyes widening in alarm as she senses the depth of the curse. The black stream's influence is too potent, too insidious. She steps back, shaking her head with a mixture of fear and pity. "I cannot help you," she whispers, her voice trembling. "The darkness within you is too strong. I'm sorry, but you must leave." His heart sinks, the last vestige of hope crumbling. Rejected by the one person he believed could save him, he stumbles out of the cottage, feeling more alone and desolate than ever. The sense of being forsaken gnaws at him, a bitter reminder of his helplessness. The despair that follows is like a heavy shroud, enveloping him in its cold embrace. In the wake of this rejection, the character's condition deteriorates rapidly. The black stream's curse tightens its grip, manifesting in horrific ways. He begins to notice a foul odor, the unmistakable stench of decay and rot, that seems to cling to his very being. No amount of washing or cleaning can rid him of this miasma, which only serves to deepen his isolation as friends and strangers alike recoil from his presence. His physical appearance starts to reflect the inner corruption. His skin takes on a pallor, veins darkening, as if filled with ink. The once bright spark in his eyes is replaced by a hollow, haunted look. The darkness within is consuming him, body and soul, turning him into a living embodiment of the black stream's malevolence. Emotionally, he becomes a shadow of his former self. Fear is a constant companion, gnawing at the edges of his sanity. His dreams are plagued by nightmarish visions of the black stream, its waters whispering dreadful secrets that he cannot escape. His waking hours are no better, filled with a gnawing dread and an overwhelming sense of impending doom. Worse still, his emotions begin to warp under the curse's influence. The kindness and empathy that once defined him are replaced by anger and bitterness. He lashes out at those around him, driven by an uncontrollable rage. The people he loves most become the targets of his fury, their concern and confusion only fueling his inner turmoil. The black stream's curse is relentless, eroding the very core of his humanity. Every day he slips further into darkness, the boundaries between himself and the curse blurring. He feels himself becoming one with the malevolent force, his soul blackening as surely as his body. The sense of losing himself, of being subsumed by the curse, is a terror unlike any other. In this state of utter despair and physical decline, the character realizes that he is not just fighting an external force, but a battle for his very soul. The black stream is no longer just a curse, it is a part of him, a darkness that he must confront if he ever hopes to reclaim his life. But as his symptoms worsen and his hope fades, the path to salvation seems more elusive than ever, a distant dream overshadowed by the encroaching nightmare. The protagonist, now burdened with the malevolent influence of the black stream, attempts to adapt to his new reality. He goes through the motions of daily life, but each action feels increasingly futile. The mundane tasks that once brought him a sense of stability now seem like hollow rituals. He forces himself to smile at familiar faces, yet the warmth behind these gestures has faded. His interactions become strained, his laughter forced, and his once vibrant spirit begins to wither under the weight of the curse. Despite his efforts to hold on to the remnants of his former self, a creeping darkness invades his thoughts, casting a shadow over every moment. His dreams are haunted by images of the stream, and even in waking hours, he feels its cold presence seeping into his bones. Each day, the world around him appears a little dimmer, as if the light itself is being swallowed by the abyss that follows him. As the days pass, the protagonist's connection to the black stream deepens, and he feels his essence slowly merging with its inky depths. This sinister bond becomes a tangible force, dragging him closer to the edge of sanity. The once distant whispers of the stream grow louder, echoing in his mind with a chilling persistence. He begins to lose track of time, moments bleeding into one another in a disorienting haze. The line between reality and nightmare blurs, and he finds himself drawn to the stream, compelled to revisit the source of his torment. His body weakens, and he can feel the vitality draining from him, replaced by an eerie stillness that mimics the stagnant water. Every step he takes feels heavier, as if the ground itself is conspiring to pull him down into the earth. His skin, once warm and alive, takes on a pallor that mirrors the lifeless hue of the stream. In his waking hours, he hears the mournful cries of those who have succumbed before him, their voices a constant reminder of his impending doom. He fights to retain his humanity, clinging to memories of happier times, but they slip through his fingers like water. The people around him grow distant, unable to understand the torment that gnaws at his soul. He becomes a shadow of his former self, his eyes reflecting the darkness that now consumes him. In moments of clarity, he realizes that the curse is not just an external force but a part of him, a black stain on his very being. He is no longer merely living with the curse, he is becoming it. The inevitability of his fate sinks in, and he understands that the black stream is not just a place but a destination. His journey toward it is inexorable, a descent into madness and despair from which there is no return. The protagonist, now utterly consumed by the curse of the black stream, reaches a point of no return. His will to fight has eroded, replaced by a grim resignation. One fateful night, he is drawn irresistibly to the stream, the dark waters calling to him with an almost sentient hunger. He steps into the water, the cold liquid wrapping around his ankles like icy chains. As he wades deeper, the water rises, enveloping him, each step heavier than the last. He feels the stream's malevolent essence permeating his body, its darkness seeping into his veins. The protagonist's mind is a tempest of fragmented memories and haunting whispers, but amidst the chaos, one image remains clear: his wife, frantically searching for him, her movements a desperate dance of love and sorrow. Her calls echo through the night, a heartbreaking counterpoint to the silence of the black stream. He wants to respond, to tell her that he is here, but the words die in his throat, choked by the suffocating darkness. As the water reaches his chest, he feels his strength waning, his consciousness slipping away. He closes his eyes, surrendering to the inevitable. The last thing he sees is his wife's silhouette, a poignant reminder of the life and love he is leaving behind. The stream claims him entirely, his body sinking into its depths, leaving no trace behind. In what seems like an instant, the protagonist awakens with a start. He gasps for breath, his heart pounding, his skin cold and clammy. He sits up and looks around, realizing with a jolt of disbelief that he is back in his bed. The familiar surroundings of his room offer a fleeting sense of relief, but it quickly dissipates as he notices the faint traces of black water on his hands, the telltale sign of the stream's lingering curse. He stumbles to the window, looking out into the night, the oppressive silence heavy with the promise of the stream's return. The cycle has restarted, an endless loop of torment and despair. The realization crashes over him like a wave, but amidst the overwhelming dread, a glimmer of hope flickers. He survived once before, and in this repetition he sees a chance, however slim, to break free from the curse. Determination steels his resolve. He must find a way to end this nightmare, not just for himself, but for his wife and for all who might fall victim to the black stream's malevolence. With renewed purpose, the protagonist begins to prepare. He recalls every detail of his previous encounters with the stream, searching for clues and patterns that might lead to its undoing. The night is long and filled with shadows, but he faces it with a newfound courage. The black stream is a formidable foe, its darkness profound and ancient, but he refuses to let it claim him again without a fight. The cycle may be unbroken for now, but as long as hope remains, so does the possibility of escape. The protagonist awakens with a start, his body drenched in sweat and his heart pounding furiously. As his eyes adjust to the dim light of his bedroom, he becomes aware of a sharp, stinging pain in his hands. He looks down to find his palms and fingers marred with deep cuts, the dried blood crusted over them like a macabre patchwork. Confusion floods his mind. He vividly remembers the black stream, the overwhelming darkness, and the cold, suffocating grip of the water as it pulled him under. Yet here he is, in his bed, the familiar surroundings offering a stark contrast to the nightmare that still lingers in his thoughts. His breath comes in shallow gasps as he tries to piece together how he could be back in his home, seemingly safe. The memories of his desperate plunge into the stream and the final, drowning surrender are so clear that they feel more real than the bed he now sits in. He flexes his fingers, wincing at the pain, and the reality of his injuries cements his sense of bewilderment. How could he have survived, let alone returned to his room? The absence of the stream's malevolent whispers and the oppressive darkness is disorienting, yet profoundly relieving. As the initial shock begins to fade, a new emotion rises within him: joy. It starts as a tentative spark, barely noticeable amid his confusion, but it quickly grows, filling him with a warm, almost euphoric sensation. After so many days, weeks, of relentless fear and despair, the possibility that he might have escaped the curse is intoxicating. He swings his legs over the side of the bed and stands, the weight of his ordeal lifting slightly with each passing moment. He moves through his home, each familiar object and sound reassuring him that he is indeed back in the real world. The mundane comfort of his surroundings, once taken for granted, now feels like a precious gift. He allows himself to believe that perhaps the nightmare has ended, that the black stream's hold on him has been broken. How it happened remains a mystery, but for now he is content to bask in the relief and happiness that comes with this new reality. A genuine smile spreads across his face for the first time in what feels like an eternity. He revels in the simple joys, the warmth of sunlight filtering through the window, the sound of birds chirping outside, and the softness of the carpet under his feet. He even chuckles at the absurdity of it all, how close he came to losing everything, only to be returned to normalcy in such an inexplicable manner. Despite the unanswered questions and the lingering physical evidence of his ordeal, the protagonist allows himself to hope. He has been given another chance, and he intends to make the most of it. As he tends to his wounds, he silently vows to cherish every moment of this newfound freedom, grateful for the strange, miraculous reprieve from the darkness that once sought to consume him. As the protagonist navigates the surreal relief of his normalcy, he decides to take a walk outside to clear his mind. The morning air is crisp, and the sun casts a golden glow over the familiar streets. However, as he rounds a corner, his heart skips a beat. There, standing under a tree, is a woman he thought he would never see again. Her face is unmistakable. She is the woman who had been found dead by the black stream. He stops in his tracks, the shock freezing him in place. She turns and their eyes meet. For a moment he thinks he's lost his grip on reality again. that perhaps this is another trick of the cursed stream. But she walks toward him, her movements deliberate and real. As she gets closer, he sees that her skin has the same pallor as his, and her eyes hold a depth of sorrow and understanding that mirrors his own. "I know this is confusing," she says softly, her voice carrying the weight of shared suffering. "But you're not dreaming, and you're not imagining things. We both fell victim to the Black Stream's curse." He stares at her, struggling to comprehend. "But you were dead. I saw the body," he stammers. She nods, a sad smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, I was. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. The stream doesn't just take your life, it takes your existence. It erases you from the world, makes you a shadow, a ghost in the land of the living. We are here, but we are forgotten, unrecognized. It's as if we never existed." Her words send a chill down his spine. He had hoped to be free, to have escaped the clutches of the stream, but now he understands the true horror of their situation. They are trapped in a liminal space, alive yet not living, present but unacknowledged. The curse has condemned them to a life of perpetual invisibility, where their actions go unnoticed, their words unheard. "We will live like this," she continues, "in a state of perpetual limbo. No one will see us, no one will remember us. We are outside of their reality now, mere phantoms." The realization is crushing. All the joy he had felt earlier dissipates, replaced by a deep, gnawing despair. "Is there any way to break the curse?" he asks, desperation creeping into his voice. She shakes her head slowly. "I've searched for answers, tried everything I could think of. The curse is ancient and powerful. There might be a way, but it's hidden, lost to time. We can only hope to find it, but until then, we must endure." The protagonist feels a profound sense of loss, not just for his life, but for the very essence of his being. They are condemned to a fate worse than death, a life of eternal isolation and forgetfulness. Yet, as he looks at the woman before him, he realizes they share this burden, and in that, there is a sliver of solace. They are not entirely alone, they have each other, and perhaps, in their mutual quest for freedom, they might one day find a way to break the curse. Until then, they must navigate this ghostly existence together, living in the shadows of a world that no longer recognizes their presence. As the days pass, the protagonist delves deeper into the mysteries of the Black Stream. He begins to understand that the curse is not merely a personal affliction, but a contagious evil that ensnares anyone who comes into contact with it. The Black Stream spreads its malevolent influence through whispers and shadows, silently claiming new victims and erasing them from the world. The woman's tragic fate and his own plight are just pieces of a much larger, more sinister puzzle. He realizes with growing horror that the stream's power is not limited to them. It can and will extend its grasp if left unchecked. Late one night, he sifts through old records and local legends, piecing together the stream's dark history. Each account tells of despair, of lives unremembered, and of families torn apart by the inexplicable disappearances of their loved ones. The stream has claimed countless souls over the centuries, each one feeding its insatiable hunger for life and presence. The protagonist sees the pattern and understands that the curse's potency lies in its secrecy. By remaining unknown, it can continue to thrive and ensnare more victims. Armed with this knowledge, the protagonist realizes that his primary mission is to prevent the Black Stream from claiming any more lives. He must stop the curse from spreading, even if it means exposing himself to danger once again. He decides to document everything he has learned, every fragment of information about the curse, hoping that this knowledge will serve as a warning to others. He writes feverishly, detailing his own experiences, the woman's story, and the historical accounts he has uncovered. He includes sketches of the stream's location and descriptions of the eerie phenomena that accompany its presence. Understanding the need for immediate action, he plans to distribute his findings to the local community. He targets places where people are likely to pay attention: community centers, schools, and libraries. He even considers contacting local media, though he knows the risk of being dismissed as a crackpot. The thought of facing ridicule is nothing compared to the urgency of preventing further tragedies. The protagonist also contemplates a more direct approach. He decides to stake out the area around the Black Stream, warning off anyone who ventures too close. He envisions himself as a guardian, standing vigil over the cursed waters, ensuring that no one else falls prey to its dark enchantment. He prepares signs and barriers, anything to keep people away. Despite the overwhelming odds and the ever-present danger, a newfound determination fuels him. The curse may have condemned him to a life of shadows, but he refuses to let it claim another soul. As he stands by the stream, watching the dark waters swirl ominously, he vows to fight against its malignant influence with every breath he has left. He knows the battle will be long and arduous, but he clings to a flicker of hope. If he can save even one person from the stream's grasp, then perhaps his suffering will not have been in vain. In this relentless struggle against the encroaching darkness, he finds a purpose, a reason to continue despite the despair that surrounds him. Even though the protagonist might have escaped the immediate grasp of the curse, a lingering dread haunts his every moment. He knows the black stream's malevolence isn't easily vanquished. Its dark tendrils could reach out at any time, claiming new victims or pulling him back into its murky depths. This awareness transforms his relief into a constant state of vigilance. Every shadow seems a potential threat, every rustling leaf a sinister whisper. The stream's presence feels omnipresent, lurking just beyond the edges of his perception. The fear of its return gnaws at him, preventing him from finding true peace. The protagonist develops an acute sense of paranoia. He checks his surroundings obsessively, scanning for any signs of the black stream's influence. He jumps at small noises, his nerves frayed by the constant tension. The fear is suffocating, a heavy blanket that smothers his attempts to rebuild a normal life. He isolates himself, afraid that any contact with others might somehow draw them into his cursed reality. The idea that the stream could reach out and claim someone else fills him with dread, and this fear keeps him in a state of perpetual anxiety. Amidst the terror, doubt begins to creep in. The rational part of his mind rebels against the fantastical nature of his experiences. How could a stream curse people? How could it erase them from existence? These questions plague him, making him question the very nature of his ordeal. He starts to consider the possibility that it was all a figment of his imagination, a psychological break rather than a supernatural event. He clings to this rationalization like a lifeline. He tells himself that there must be a logical explanation, that the stories of the black stream are just that, stories. The idea of cursed waters and empty graves seems absurd in the harsh light of day. He scrutinizes his memories, searching for inconsistencies that might prove it was all a delusion. The woman's reappearance, the whispers, the sensation of drowning, all of it must have an explanation rooted in reality. In an attempt to reclaim his sanity, he begins to reject everything related to the curse. He dismisses the tales of empty coffins and forgotten souls as mere folklore. He avoids any mention of the stream, hoping that by ignoring it, he can banish the fear from his mind. Yet, despite his efforts, the nagging sense of unease never fully dissipates. His denial becomes a fragile shield, one that cracks easily under pressure. He avoids discussing his experiences with anyone, fearing they will either confirm his worst fears or deem him insane. This isolation deepens his internal conflict, as the need for validation clashes with his desperate desire for normalcy. The protagonist's nights are filled with restless sleep, haunted by dreams where the black stream returns, pulling him under its inky surface. Each morning he awakens with a start, drenched in sweat, the line between dream and reality blurring. His mind oscillates between rationality and fear, caught in a relentless tug of war. In his heart, he knows the threat of the black stream is real. The curse's mark is upon him, an indelible stain that denial alone cannot wash away. But admitting this truth means accepting the terrifying reality that he is never truly safe, that the stream's dark power might one day reclaim him. This inner turmoil traps him in a liminal space, caught between belief and disbelief, hope and despair, unable to fully embrace either side. One night, as the protagonist tries to quell his racing thoughts, he encounters the Diamond Lady again. She appears suddenly, as if conjured by the darkness itself, her presence both eerie and commanding. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, pierce through his attempts at denial. "You think you've escaped, but you haven't," she says, her voice a haunting whisper that echoes in the still night. The curse of the black stream is not easily broken. It clings to you, unseen but ever present. You will be shunned, cast out from society. No matter how you try to explain, No one will believe you. They will see you as mad, a pariah. Your words will fall on deaf ears, and you will find yourself utterly alone. Her words strike a deep chord of fear and confusion within him. He wants to dismiss her warnings as mere superstition, yet something in her tone, a mix of pity and certainty, makes it hard to ignore. She stands as a spectral reminder of the curse's inescapable grip, her presence a chilling testament to the fate that awaits him. You must understand, she continues, that this curse is ancient and relentless. It thrives on isolation and despair. By denying its existence, you only strengthen its hold. You may try to warn others, but they will turn away, unable or unwilling to see the truth. This is the curse's greatest power. It makes you invisible, forgotten, a ghost among the living. The protagonist, shaken but not willing to give in to fear, clings to his skepticism. This is absurd, he retorts, trying to inject confidence into his voice. Curses, ancient streams, these are all just myths and stories to scare children. There must be a logical explanation for everything that's happened. He spends hours poring over books and articles, seeking a rational explanation for his experiences. Psychological theories, hallucinations, environmental factors, he explores every possibility. The idea of a supernatural curse feels ludicrous in the modern world. Science and reason should prevail over fear and superstition. Yet, the more he searches for answers, the more elusive they become. The memories of his encounters with the Black Stream and the Diamond Lady refuse to fade, lingering at the edges of his consciousness like a persistent nightmare. He tells himself that his mind is playing tricks, that stress and exhaustion are distorting his perception of reality. He visits doctors and psychologists, hoping they can offer some clarity. They listen to his story with polite skepticism, their diagnoses ranging from acute stress disorder to possible psychosis. They prescribe medication and recommend rest, but their reassurances do little to quell his growing unease. As he continues to deny the curse, his relationships with others begin to fray. Friends and family grow distant, their concern turning into suspicion and discomfort. Conversations become strained, their eyes filled with doubt and pity. The protagonist finds himself increasingly isolated, his attempts to explain only pushing people further away. His nights are filled with restless sleep, haunted by dreams of the Black Stream and the Diamond Lady's foreboding presence. He wakes up in a cold sweat, the sense of dread and impending doom ever present. Despite his efforts to rationalize, the fear gnaws at him, an insidious whisper that grows louder with each passing day. In the face of mounting evidence that something beyond the ordinary is at play, the protagonist remains steadfast in his denial. Admitting the reality of the curse would mean accepting a fate worse than death, utter isolation, and invisibility. But as the Diamond Lady's warnings echo in his mind, he begins to wonder if his refusal to believe is not an act of courage, but a surrender to the very fear he wishes to escape. Caught in a web of doubt and denial, he teeters on the edge of madness, unable to fully accept or reject the terrifying reality of the Black Stream's curse. Determined to break free from the suffocating grip of the curse and the Diamond Lady's cryptic warnings, the protagonist sets out to expose her. He believes that if he can prove her wrong, he can dispel the growing fear that haunts his every step. Confronting her in the dead of night, he demands logical explanations and tangible evidence. You speak of curses and ancient evils, but where is the proof, he challenges, his voice edged with desperation and defiance. Show me something real, something that isn't just shadows and whispers. The Diamond Lady remains calm, her eyes reflecting a deep sorrow. Some things cannot be explained with logic, she replies. The curse is not bound by the rules of your world. It exists beyond the veil of your understanding. Frustrated, the protagonist presses harder. He follows her through the darkened streets, hoping to catch her in a lie or see her perform some trick that will reveal her as a charlatan. He scrutinizes her every word and action, seeking cracks in her story. But she offers no further explanation, only a knowing silence that unnerves him more than any words could. His quest for rationality leads him to consult historians, scientists, and anyone who might provide a logical framework to debunk the curse. He gathers ancient texts and modern studies, hoping to find discrepancies or falsehoods. Despite his exhaustive efforts, The pieces of the puzzle refuse to fit neatly into any conventional explanation. The Diamond Lady's words haunt him. The curse is ancient and relentless. He dismisses them as fear-mongering, yet a small part of him can't shake the sense of impending doom. The more he seeks to expose her, the deeper he sinks into a labyrinth of uncertainty and fear. Each failed attempt to unravel the mystery only deepens his despair. He feels as if he's fighting an invisible enemy, one that slips through his fingers whenever he thinks he's found a foothold. The realization that he cannot outwit or expose the curse with mere logic dawns on him like a cold, unrelenting shadow. His mind, once sharp and focused, now feels clouded by a relentless fog of anxiety and dread. Sleep offers no respite. His dreams are plagued by visions of the Black Stream and the Diamond Lady's sorrowful gaze. He awakens each day feeling more drained and defeated than the last. Interactions with others become strained. Friends and family, once sources of comfort and support, now seem distant and alien. Their inability to understand his plight isolates him further. They offer platitudes and rational solutions that only highlight the vast chasm between his reality and theirs. As the days bleed into one another, a crushing sense of helplessness takes root. The protagonist realizes he is alone in this battle, his cries for help echoing in the void. The Diamond Lady's warning about isolation becomes a grim prophecy fulfilled. Desperation pushes him to the brink. He considers giving up, letting the Black Stream consume him, hoping that surrender might bring peace. Yet, even in his darkest moments, a flicker of defiance remains. He refuses to let the curse break him completely, clinging to the fragile hope that there must be a way out. This hope, however, is constantly undermined by the overwhelming evidence of his powerlessness. He feels trapped in a nightmare from which there is no waking. The curse, intangible yet omnipresent, has woven itself into the fabric of his existence, leaving him in a perpetual state of fear and uncertainty. In this liminal space between belief and denial, the protagonist's sanity frays. He is caught in a relentless cycle of doubt and despair, unable to find solid ground. The more he tries to escape the curse's grip, the tighter it seems to hold him, an invisible noose that tightens with each passing day. Despite the overwhelming doubts and pervasive denial, the protagonist reaches a pivotal moment of resolve. He decides that if he is to escape the clutches of the Black Stream's curse, he must face it head-on. This curse, which has woven its way into every aspect of his life, must have an origin, a source that can be confronted and understood. He prepares himself mentally and physically for the journey ahead. Armed with a notebook full of legends, maps, and any historical references he could find, he sets out to trace the Black Stream to its source. His heart pounds with a mix of fear and determination. The journey feels as much internal as external, a quest to reclaim his sanity and life from the dark grip of the curse. The trek is arduous. He navigates through dense forests, treacherous ravines, and long-forgotten paths that seem to resist his passage. Days stretch into weeks as he follows the stream upstream, its inky blackness a constant reminder of the darkness he seeks to dispel. He camps under the stars, the night filled with eerie sounds and unsettling dreams. One night, while resting by the stream, he encounters strange, ancient symbols carved into rocks along the bank. They seem to tell a story, a warning perhaps, from those who came before him. His fingers trace the worn carvings, feeling a connection to those who had faced the same darkness. This discovery fuels his resolve. He believes that understanding these symbols might be key to breaking the curse. As he moves closer to the source, the air grows colder, the land more desolate. Vegetation becomes sparse, and an unnatural stillness pervades the area. He senses that he is nearing the heart of the curse, the place where it all began. Finally, he reaches a clearing where the Black Stream emerges from a gaping chasm in the earth. The sight is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The water bubbles up, dark and viscous, from an unfathomable depth. The air around it hums with a strange energy, and whispers seem to emanate from the chasm, as if the souls of the cursed are crying out. Drawing a deep breath, the protagonist steps closer to the source. He opens his notebook and begins to compare the symbols on the rocks to those he has documented. Hours pass as he meticulously deciphers their meanings. Slowly, A pattern emerges, a ritual, a possible way to confront and neutralize the curse. With the instructions pieced together, he gathers the necessary elements, specific herbs, stones, and other natural materials referenced in the ancient texts. As he performs the ritual, chanting the incantations with a voice that wavers between fear and hope, the air around him thickens. The stream's surface begins to ripple violently, as if reacting to his actions. A sense of unease grips him. Shadows lengthen and twist, and for a moment he fears that he might be making things worse. But as he completes the final steps of the ritual, a strange calm settles over the clearing. The whispers fade, and the blackness of the stream begins to lighten, its inky hue gradually turning clear. Exhausted, the protagonist collapses by the stream, watching in awe as the water runs pure for the first time in centuries. The oppressive weight that had been suffocating him lifts, replaced by a profound sense of relief and triumph. As dawn breaks, he feels a glimmer of hope. He has not only confronted the source of the curse, but has also found a way to cleanse it. Though he is weary and battered, a sense of accomplishment and renewed purpose fills him. He knows the journey back will be long, but he is no longer alone or forgotten. He carries with him the knowledge and power to prevent others from falling prey to the curse of the Black Stream. His return is marked by a newfound clarity and determination. The experience has changed him, forged him into someone who understands the balance between light and dark, fear and courage. He is ready to share his story, to warn others, and to ensure that the curse remains a part of history, not of the present. The Black Stream cycle of despair is broken, replaced by a legacy of resilience and hope. Max sat hunched over his computer, the blue glow from the screen illuminating his determined face in the otherwise dark room. His fingers flew over the keyboard, eyes scanning line after line of information. For weeks he had been searching, piecing together bits of information from obscure forums and shadowy corners of the internet. Tonight, he felt he was close to a breakthrough. The search had become an obsession. It all started with a series of strange messages and unexplained occurrences around his neighborhood. Max was determined to uncover the truth. Suddenly, his breath caught in his throat as he found a peculiar symbol marked on an old map. His pulse quickened as he clicked on the link, leading him to a location on Yandex Maps. It was an isolated spot deep within the forest, just outside town. He printed out the map, his mind racing with possibilities. Little did he know, his discovery was about to unravel a series of events that would change everything. Max and Lisa had known each other since they were children. Their relationship had blossomed over the years, from innocent playground games to a deep, romantic connection that spanned their school and college years. They were inseparable, bound by shared memories and dreams of a future together. Max recalled the first time he met Lisa in the 3rd grade, her bright laughter echoing through the schoolyard. They became fast friends, their bond strengthening with each passing year. Through middle school, they confided in each other, sharing secrets and aspirations. High school brought its own challenges, but their relationship only grew stronger. They spent countless hours studying together, attending school dances, and whispering sweet nothings under the stars. When they graduated and moved on to college, they chose the same university to stay close. Those years were filled with late-night study sessions, spontaneous road trips, and dreams of what their life together would look like after graduation. Lisa was everything to Max, his confidante, his rock, his love. However, as they navigated their final year of college, Max started noticing subtle changes in Lisa. She seemed distant, her once warm and inviting demeanor now replaced with an unsettling coldness. He dismissed it at first, blaming it on the stress of their impending graduation and the uncertainty of their future. But the nagging feeling of something being terribly wrong refused to leave him. Their once vivid conversations about dreams and future plans turned into monosyllabic exchanges. Lisa's eyes, which once sparkled with joy, now looked vacant, as if she were hiding something. Max's concern grew into anxiety, and he found himself becoming more and more obsessed with finding out what was wrong. He began to delve into her activities, trying to understand the cause of her transformation. One evening, while browsing through Lisa's social media profiles for any clues, he stumbled upon a series of cryptic messages exchanged between Lisa and a mysterious individual named Nikita. The messages were strange. filled with references to places Max had never heard of and activities he couldn't comprehend. His heart sank as he realized that Lisa's secretive behavior might be connected to this unknown person. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Max started digging deeper, his searches becoming more frantic. He traced Nikita's digital footprint, uncovering connections to esoteric groups and unexplained phenomena. The more he discovered, the more his fear grew. There was something sinister about Nikita, something that was pulling Lisa away from him. His relentless search led him to the map on Yandex, the peculiar symbol, and the isolated forest location. It was clear to Max that the answers he sought lay there, waiting to be uncovered. What Max didn't know was that his quest for truth would soon lead him down a dark and twisted path, where every discovery would peel back layers of horror and despair, revealing a reality far more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. Nikita appeared in their lives almost out of nowhere. He was a tall, charismatic man with an enigmatic smile that never quite reached his eyes. Max first noticed him at a college party, casually leaning against a wall while chatting with a group of students. Lisa introduced him as an old family friend who had recently moved back to town. Max's initial impression of Nikita was neutral, but something about him felt off, like a discordant note in an otherwise harmonious melody. As the weeks went by, Nikita began to insert himself more and more into their lives. He would join them for coffee, appear at social gatherings, and even accompany them on outings that had once been reserved for just Max and Lisa. Nikita seemed to know a lot about Lisa's past, often bringing up obscure anecdotes and inside jokes that made Max feel like an outsider in his own relationship. Despite his efforts to befriend Nikita, Max couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at him whenever Nikita was around. With Nikita's presence came an unsettling shift in the dynamics of Max and Lisa's relationship. Lisa, who had always been open and affectionate, became increasingly withdrawn. She started canceling plans with Max, opting instead to spend time with Nikita. When they were together, Max noticed that Lisa's attention seemed divided, her thoughts drifting away even when she was physically present. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Max reached out to hold Lisa's hand. She pulled away, her eyes darting nervously toward her phone, which had just buzzed with a message. It was from Nikita. Max's heart sank as he watched her face light up with a smile she hadn't shown him in weeks. The realization hit him like a cold wave. Nikita was more than just a friend to Lisa. Their conversations grew shorter and more strained. Lisa became secretive, often disappearing for hours without explanation. When Max questioned her, she dismissed his concerns with vague excuses that did nothing to quell his growing anxiety. The warmth and intimacy they once shared were replaced by a cold distance that Max couldn't bridge. Max's sleep was plagued by nightmares. He would dream of dark forests and shadowy figures, always with Nikita at the center, his smile a sinister slash in the darkness. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his mind racing with thoughts of what Nikita could be doing to Lisa, what kind of hold he had over her. In a desperate attempt to reclaim their relationship, Max planned a surprise weekend getaway for the two of them. But when he presented the idea to Lisa, she hesitated. Her eyes flicked to her phone once again, and Max could see the internal struggle on her face. Finally, she agreed, but the enthusiasm was forced. Max knew that her heart wasn't in it, that her thoughts were with Nikita. During the trip, Max tried to rekindle their connection, but every effort was met with indifference. Lisa seemed distracted, her mind always elsewhere. At night, as they lay in bed, Max could hear her whispering into her phone, her voice low and conspiratorial. When he confronted her, she claimed she was just talking to a friend, but Max knew better. The trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship was crumbling, and Max felt powerless to stop it. The presence of Nikita had cast a dark shadow over their lives, altering the very fabric of their relationship. Max's love for Lisa had not diminished, but it was now tainted with suspicion and fear. He couldn't understand the nature of Nikita's influence over Lisa, but he knew it was profound and dangerous. The closer he tried to get to Lisa, the further she drifted away, ensnared in a web that Max couldn't see but could feel tightening around them both. Max's desperation grew, pushing him deeper into his search for answers. The discovery of the symbol on the map, the strange location in the forest, these clues seemed to be connected to Nikita's arrival and Lisa's transformation. Max knew he had to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Little did he know, the path he was on would lead him into a nightmare far beyond his darkest fears. The tension had been building for weeks, simmering just below the surface. Max could feel it in every strained conversation, every awkward silence, and every evasive look Lisa gave him. The final straw came one night when Max, driven by desperation and suspicion, decided to follow Lisa. She had told him she was going to study with a friend, but Max's instincts screamed otherwise. He trailed her at a safe distance, his heart pounding as she left the familiar path leading to the library and headed towards the outskirts of town. The evening air was cool and filled with the scent of pine as he watched her meet Nikita near an old, abandoned warehouse. Max's pulse quickened as he crouched behind a tree, his eyes narrowing as he watched the two of them exchange furtive glances and hushed words. As he moved closer, the murmur of their conversation became clearer. Nikita was holding Lisa's hands, his voice low and urgent. Max's breath caught in his throat as he heard words that confirmed his worst fears. They were talking about leaving, about escaping together. The world seemed to tilt, the ground shifting beneath Max's feet as he realized the full extent of their betrayal. Unable to contain his fury, Max stepped out of the shadows. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Lisa's face went pale, her eyes wide with shock and guilt. Nikita, however, remained calm, his expression cold and calculating. "You shouldn't have come here," Max Nikita said, his voice devoid of emotion. "This doesn't concern you anymore." Max's hands clenched into fists as he stepped closer, his rage boiling over. "It concerns me when you're trying to steal my girlfriend," he spat, his eyes locked onto Nikita's. Nikita smirked, his arrogance infuriating. She made her choice, Max. Accept it and move on. The words were like gasoline on a fire. Max lunged at Nikita, fists flying as years of frustration and betrayal erupted in a violent torrent. They grappled, fists landing and feet stumbling on the uneven ground. Lisa screamed, trying to pull them apart, but her efforts were in vain. The fight was brutal, a raw expression of the emotions that had been festering for so long. In the chaos, Max managed to land a solid punch to Nikita's jaw, sending him sprawling to the ground. Breathing heavily, Max stood over him, his chest heaving with exertion and emotion. Nikita lay motionless, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. The aftermath of the fight was a blur. Sirens wailed in the distance as Lisa called for an ambulance, her hands trembling. Max sat on the ground, staring at his bloodied knuckles, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. He had never been a violent person, but tonight had pushed him beyond his limits. Nikita was taken to the hospital, his injuries severe but not life-threatening. Max watched as the ambulance drove away, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. There was a strange sense of relief mixed with the guilt relief that Nikita was out of the picture, at least for now, and that the constant tension had been momentarily lifted. Lisa stood beside him, her face streaked with tears. "Why, Max," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why did it have to come to this?" Max looked at her, his eyes filled with pain and regret. "I had to know, Lisa. I had to know the truth. And now that I do, I can't just pretend everything is okay." Their relationship was in ruins, shattered by lies and betrayal. As they walked home in silence, Max couldn't shake the feeling that something dark and insidious had wormed its way into their lives, something that had used Nikita as a vessel. The forest, the symbol on the map, and the strange occurrences all seemed interconnected, pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture of horror and despair. The days that followed were filled with a tense quiet. Lisa visited Nikita in the hospital, her guilt driving a wedge further between her and Max. Max, on the other hand, felt a twisted sense of satisfaction knowing that Nikita was suffering. It was a dark and dangerous path, one that promised no redemption but only further descent into madness and fear. Max knew he had to continue his search, to uncover the truth behind Nikita's influence and the eerie symbols that seemed to haunt his every step. The answers lay in the dark, foreboding forest, waiting to be discovered. But as Max prepared to delve deeper into the mystery, he couldn't shake the feeling that some truths were better left buried, hidden in the shadows where they belonged. A month had passed since the night of the fight. a month of strained silences and unresolved tension. Max had thrown himself into his search for answers, trying to piece together the fragments of the mystery that surrounded Nikita and the eerie symbols on the map. Lisa, meanwhile, had become a ghost in their shared apartment, her presence felt but rarely seen. One evening, as Max sat hunched over his computer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. It was Nikita. For a moment he considered ignoring the call, but curiosity got the better of him. He answered, his voice cold and wary. "What do you want, Nikita?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Nikita's voice came through, surprisingly calm. "Max, I think we need to talk. There's a lot you don't understand about what happened, about what's still happening." Max's grip tightened on the phone. "And you think you can just explain everything away? After everything you did?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Nikita replied. "I just think you deserve to know the truth. Meet me tomorrow at the old warehouse. No tricks, no games." Max hesitated, but the lure of answers was too strong to resist. "Fine, I'll be there." That night, Max found Lisa in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation that needed to happen. He sat down next to her, the silence between them heavy and charged with unspoken words. "Lisa," he began softly, "I owe you an apology. What happened with Nikita? It shouldn't have come to that. I let my anger and jealousy get the best of me, and I'm sorry." Lisa turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and relief. "Max, I don't know what to say. It's been so hard. I felt like I was losing you, and everything just spiraled out of control." Max reached out, taking her hand in his. "I promise it won't happen again. Whatever Nikita's hold on you was, we can work through it. Together. I just need you to trust me, and I need to trust you." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. "I want to believe you, Max. I really do. Let's try to move forward, okay? No more secrets." Max nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. No more secrets. The next day, Max made his way to the old warehouse, the place where he had confronted Nikita and discovered the truth about his betrayal. The building loomed ominously, its broken windows like dark eyes watching his approach. Max's heart raced as he pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. Nikita was waiting for him, sitting on an overturned crate in the middle of the empty space. He looked pale, a bandage still visible on his forehead from the fight. Max approached cautiously, every muscle in his body tense. "You came," Nikita said, his voice tired but steady. "Yeah," Max replied, crossing his arms. "You said you had something to tell me, so talk." Nikita took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto Max's. "There's more to all of this than you know. The symbols, the forest, they're part of something much bigger. I got involved with a group that, well, let's just say they deal with things beyond normal understanding. Lisa and I got caught up in it, and it changed us." Max frowned, trying to process Nikita's words. What kind of group, and what does this have to do with Lisa? Nikita hesitated, then continued. "They're called the Order of the Crimson Forest. They believe in ancient rituals and hidden knowledge, things that can grant power but at a terrible cost. Lisa was curious, and I introduced her to them. It was a mistake, one that I'm paying for now." Max's mind raced. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was terrifying. So what now? How do we get out of this? Nikita stood, his expression serious. "We have to destroy the connection, the symbols. It's the only way to break free from their influence. I'll help you, Max, but you have to trust me." Max felt a chill run down his spine. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it was a path he had to take. For Lisa, for himself, and for the truth that lay buried in the shadows. He nodded slowly, his resolve hardening. "All right, let's end this." As they left the warehouse together, an uneasy alliance formed between them. Max couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The true horror was still lurking in the depths of the forest, waiting for the moment to strike. The weeks following Max's uneasy alliance with Nikita were marked by an uneasy truce. Max, determined to rekindle the bond with Lisa, decided to plan a special surprise for her. One evening, as they sat on the couch, Max turned to Lisa with a hopeful smile. "How about we go on a picnic this weekend? Just the two of us. There's this secluded spot by the lake I discovered a while back. I think you'd love it." Lisa's eyes lit up, the first genuine spark of interest he'd seen in a while. "That sounds wonderful, Max. I'd love to get away for a bit." Max felt a surge of relief. "Great. I'll handle everything. Just leave it to me." The rest of the week was a flurry of preparation. Max packed a basket with Lisa's favorite foods, a cozy blanket, and a bottle of wine. He imagined them sitting by the water, laughing and talking, the tension of the past few months melting away. When Saturday arrived, Max and Lisa set off for the lake, the anticipation of the day ahead lifting their spirits. As they walked through the forest path, hand in hand, the rustling leaves and birdsong created a serene backdrop, momentarily masking the underlying unease that still lingered between them. Just as they were nearing the lake, Max's phone buzzed. It was a message from Nikita. Max hesitated before opening it, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. "Hey Max, a few of us are planning a hiking trip this weekend. Thought it might be a good chance to hang out and clear the air. You and Lisa should join us. What do you say?" Max frowned, showing the message to Lisa. She read it and looked at him, a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty in her eyes. "Do you think it's a good idea?" she asked, biting her lip. Max sighed. "I don't know. It could be a way to put everything behind us. Maybe it's worth a shot." Lisa nodded slowly. "All right, let's do it. But let's still have our picnic first." They spent a blissful few hours by the lake, eating, talking, and even sharing a few laughs. The sun cast a warm glow over the water, and for a while it felt like they were back to the way things used to be. As the afternoon wore on, Max checked his phone again. Another message from Nikita. "We're heading out in an hour. Meet us at the trailhead if you can make it." Max looked at Lisa, who nodded in silent agreement. They packed up their picnic and made their way to the trailhead. As they approached, they saw Nikita and a few others waiting. Nikita greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Glad you could make it. Ready for an adventure?" Max and Lisa exchanged a look. "Yeah," Max replied, trying to keep his tone light. "Let's see where this takes us." The group set off into the forest, the path winding deeper into the dense trees. At first, the hike was pleasant, with everyone chatting and laughing, but as they ventured further, the atmosphere began to change. The forest grew darker, the trees seeming to close in around them. An unsettling silence fell over the group, broken only by the crunching of leaves underfoot and the occasional distant cry of an unseen bird. Max couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, his senses on high alert. He noticed Lisa glancing around nervously as well, and he squeezed her hand reassuringly. Nikita, walking a few paces ahead, turned back and caught Max's eye. "Don't worry," he said with a grin that was more unsettling than comforting. "We're almost there." Max nodded, but his unease only grew. He couldn't help but wonder if this hike was just a friendly outing or something far more sinister. As the shadows lengthened and the forest grew even darker, Max's mind raced with possibilities. He knew one thing for sure: whatever lay ahead, he had to stay vigilant and protect Lisa at all costs. As the group trekked deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew more tense. Artyom, keeping a close watch on Nikita, couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Nikita's behavior was strange. He frequently glanced over his shoulder, his eyes darting nervously, and his usual charismatic demeanor seemed forced and strained. Artyom nudged Lisa, who was walking beside him, and whispered, "Have you noticed how jittery Nikita is? He's hiding something." Lisa looked ahead at Nikita, her brow furrowing. "Yeah, I've noticed. He's definitely up to something, but what?" Artyom shook his head, frustration bubbling up inside him. "I don't know, but we need to be careful. I don't trust him." The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to close in on them. The light dimmed as the canopy thickened, casting eerie shadows across the path. Artyom's unease grew, and he found himself glancing around, half expecting something or someone to jump out at them, Suddenly, Nikita slowed his pace, falling back to walk beside Artyom and Lisa. He flashed them a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything okay back here?" Artyom forced a smile, his suspicion only growing. "Yeah, just enjoying the hike. You seem a bit on edge, though. Everything all right?" Nikita's smile faltered for a brief moment before he regained his composure. "Of course, just keeping an eye out. This part of the forest can be tricky." Artyom nodded, not convinced in the slightest. As Nikita moved ahead again, Artyom exchanged a worried glance with Lisa. They both knew something was very wrong. Later, as the group took a break by a small stream, Artyom excused himself and walked a few paces away, pulling out his phone. He needed to clear his head and figure out what was going on. He dialed a number and waited, glancing back to ensure no one was listening. "Hello? Yeah, it's me. I need to talk to you about Nikita. Something's not right." His friends, gathered by the stream, noticed his secluded conversation and exchanged puzzled looks. Lisa watched him with a mixture of concern and irritation, wondering who he was talking to and why he felt the need for secrecy. "What do you mean?" What kind of trouble? Artyom's voice carried over the quiet murmur of the stream. "I think he's hiding something from us, something dangerous. We're deep in the forest, and he's acting really strange." His friend's curiosity turned to irritation as the conversation dragged on. Lisa, unable to contain her frustration, walked over to him. "Artyom, what's going on? Who are you talking to?" Artyom glanced at her, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "Just a friend. I'll be done in a minute." Lisa crossed her arms, clearly not satisfied with his answer. "We're out here together, and you're off having secret conversations? What's going on?" Artyom sighed, realizing he couldn't keep her in the dark. He ended the call and turned to face her. "I was talking to someone who might know what Nikita is up to. I don't trust him, Lisa. I think he's hiding something from all of us." Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. "And you think a phone call is going to solve that? We're in the middle of the forest. What can they do?" "I don't know, but I needed to do something. Nikita's behavior is getting more suspicious by the minute, and I'm not going to sit around and wait for something bad to happen." Lisa looked over at Nikita, who was chatting with the others, seemingly oblivious to their concerns. "Okay, but be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with." Artyom nodded, his resolve hardening. "I will. Just stay close and stay alert. We're going to get through this, but we need to be prepared for anything." As they rejoined the group, Artyom couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were only just beginning. The forest around them seemed to whisper with secrets, and the shadows grew longer and darker with each passing moment. He knew they had to be ready for whatever lay ahead, and he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The group gathered around a large map spread out on the forest floor, the sunlight filtering through the dense canopy above. Nikita, taking the lead, traced a path with his finger. "We'll head north from here, follow the river until we reach the old bridge, then cut through the dense part of the forest to reach the clearing," he explained. Artyom studied the map, his suspicion temporarily overshadowed by the excitement of the adventure. The clearing, marked by a small red circle, was rumored to be a beautiful and untouched spot, perfect for camping. "Sounds good to me," Artyom said, trying to keep his tone light. "How long do you think it'll take us to get there?" Nikita shrugged. "If we keep a steady pace, we should reach it by late afternoon. It's a bit of a trek, but it'll be worth it." Lisa leaned in, her eyes scanning the map. "I've heard about this place. They say it's incredibly beautiful, but also a bit eerie." Nikita smiled, though there was something unsettling about it. "That's part of the charm. It's remote and untouched by most hikers. We'll have it all to ourselves." The group nodded in agreement, the sense of anticipation growing. They packed up their gear and set off, eager to reach the mysterious clearing. As they walked, the forest around them seemed almost magical, with shafts of sunlight illuminating the moss-covered ground and the sounds of birds and rustling leaves creating a serene atmosphere. However, as the hours passed, the initial excitement began to wane. The path grew steeper and more treacherous, and the sun climbed higher, casting a stifling heat over the forest. Sweat dripped down their faces, and their backpacks seemed to grow heavier with each step. Artyom felt the strain in his legs and back but pushed forward, trying to maintain a positive attitude. He glanced at Lisa, who was panting slightly, but still managing a determined smile. "You holding up okay?" he asked, his voice breathless. Lisa nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Yeah, just a bit tired, but we're getting closer, right?" Nikita, a few paces ahead, turned back to them. "Almost there. Just a bit further and we'll reach the bridge." Despite their exhaustion, the group kept moving, driven by the promise of the beautiful clearing. They shared jokes and light banter to keep their spirits up, even as their bodies protested the grueling hike. "Why did we think this was a good idea again?" one of their friends, Mikhail, quipped, adjusting his heavy backpack. "Because we're adventurers," Artyom replied with a grin, "and we love torturing ourselves for a good view." Laughter rippled through the group, easing the tension and fatigue. They finally reached the old bridge, a rickety structure that creaked ominously as they crossed it one by one. On the other side, the path grew even narrower, the forest denser and darker. Despite the growing discomfort, there was a sense of camaraderie and determination that kept them going. Each step brought them closer to their destination, and the thought of the serene clearing spurred them on. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor, they finally emerged into a breathtaking clearing. It was as if they had stepped into another world, the air cooler and the landscape untouched by human hands. The group let out a collective sigh of relief and awe. "We made it," Lisa said, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." Artyom nodded, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Absolutely worth it. They set up camp, the sense of accomplishment and the beauty of their surroundings lifting their spirits. But even in this moment of triumph, Artyom couldn't shake the underlying unease that had settled in his gut. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and the shadows around the clearing seemed darker, deeper. As they settled down for the night, Artyom resolved to stay vigilant. They had reached their destination, but he knew their journey and the challenges that came with it was far from over. The clearing led to a secluded beach by a pristine lake, the water reflecting the clear blue sky and the surrounding forest. The group dropped their heavy packs and let out cheers of relief and excitement. They kicked off their shoes, feeling the soft, cool sand beneath their feet. "This place is incredible," Lisa said, looking around with wide eyes. "I can't believe we found it." Nikita, always the confident leader, grinned. "Told you it would be worth the hike. Let's enjoy it while we can." Mikhail wasted no time, pulling off his shirt and running towards the water. "Last one in is a rotten egg," he yelled, diving in with a splash. The others laughed and followed suit, stripping down to their swimsuits and running into the lake. The cold water was a welcome shock to their tired bodies, washing away the sweat and grime from the hike. They splashed and played, their laughter echoing across the lake. Artyom floated on his back, staring up at the sky. The tension of the past days seemed to melt away in the water. He glanced over at Lisa, who was playfully dunking Mikhail, and felt a warm sense of contentment. For a moment, it was as if all the worries and suspicions had vanished. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the beach, the group settled onto the sand to dry off. They spread out towels and laid back, soaking in the warmth. The air was filled with the sounds of birds singing and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. "This is perfect," Lisa said, closing her eyes and stretching out. "I feel like we're the only people in the world." Artyom nodded, his eyes on the treetops swaying gently in the breeze. "It's amazing. There's something magical about this place." The natural beauty around them was almost surreal. The clear water sparkled in the sunlight, and the vibrant greenery of the forest framed the scene like a painting. There was a sense of peace and freedom that was almost intoxicating. Nikita, lying a short distance away, seemed more relaxed than Artyom had seen him in days. He was laughing with their friends, telling stories and making jokes. For a brief moment, Artyom allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were as they seemed. As the afternoon wore on, The group continued to enjoy the beach. They played games, built sandcastles, and explored the edges of the forest. There was a feeling of unity and joy that made all the effort and tension worthwhile. The connection they felt with nature and with each other was profound, as if the forest had welcomed them into its embrace. However, even in this idyllic setting, Artyom couldn't completely silence the nagging doubt in the back of his mind. The shadows seemed to lengthen faster than they should, and there was an occasional rustling in the forest that didn't sound quite right. He brushed it off, focusing instead on the laughter and camaraderie around him. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, the group gathered around a small campfire they had built on the beach. They roasted marshmallows and shared stories, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. The sense of freedom and connection was almost overwhelming, filling them with a deep sense of happiness. But Artyom knew that the night would bring its own challenges. The serene beauty of the day was a sharp contrast to the eerie, oppressive feeling he had experienced earlier. He resolved to stay vigilant, even as he allowed himself to relax and enjoy the moment. The beach, with its tranquil water and golden sand, was a perfect sanctuary. Yet, in the back of his mind, Artyom couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone, that the forest around them held secrets waiting to be uncovered. As night fell, he prepared himself for whatever might come, determined to protect his friends and unravel the mystery that hung over them like a dark cloud. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the beach, the group began to wind down from their day of fun. The warmth of the campfire contrasted with the cool evening air, creating a cozy atmosphere. Artyom found himself sitting next to Asya, their shoulders brushing lightly. Each touch sent a spark through him, heightening his awareness of her presence. He watched her as she laughed at one of Mikhail's jokes, her eyes sparkling in the firelight. The way her hair fell in soft waves around her face, the curve of her smile, and the sound of her laughter captivated him. The more he observed her, the stronger his attraction grew, a magnetic pull that was impossible to ignore. Artyom's thoughts drifted to the times they had spent together over the years. He had always admired Asya, but something about this secluded setting intensified his feelings. The natural beauty around them seemed to amplify his emotions, making him acutely aware of his desire to be closer to her. As the evening progressed, Artyom's thoughts became more consumed by his feelings for Asya. He imagined taking her hand and leading her away from the group, finding a quiet spot where they could be alone. In his mind, he pictured the two of them sitting by the lake, the moonlight casting a silvery glow on the water. He could almost feel the warmth of her body next to his, hear the soft whisper of her breath as they talked about their dreams and fears. He dreamed of leaning in to kiss her, the world around them fading away as they connected on a deeper level. In his fantasies, Asya responded to his touch with equal passion, their emotions intertwining like the branches of the trees around them. Artyom envisioned a future where their bond grew stronger, where they shared not just moments of joy, but also supported each other through challenges. These dreams filled his heart with a yearning so intense it was almost painful. He wanted to make them a reality, to bridge the gap between fantasy and truth. The idea of being with Asya, of holding her close and sharing his deepest thoughts and feelings, was intoxicating. Yet beneath his romantic dreams, a shadow lingered. The eerie atmosphere of the forest, the unsettling presence of Nikita, and the strange events that had begun to unfold gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. Artyom knew that confessing his feelings to Asya was fraught with complications, not least of which was the unpredictable nature of their current situation. As he sat by the fire, lost in his thoughts, Asya turned to him and smiled. "What are you thinking about, Artyom?" she asked, her voice gentle and curious. He hesitated for a moment, considering whether to share his feelings. The words were on the tip of his tongue, but something held him back. The forest around them seemed to whisper secrets, and the firelight cast dancing shadows that hinted at hidden dangers. "Just about how lucky we are to find this place," he replied, forcing a smile. "It feels like a dream." Asya nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "It really does. I'm glad we're all here together." Artyom's heart ached with unspoken words. He longed to tell her how he felt, to turn his dreams into reality. But the night was filled with an undercurrent of unease. and he knew that some dreams were best kept in the safety of his imagination, at least for now. As they sat by the fire, the night deepened, bringing with it a sense of foreboding. Artyom's romantic fantasies were intertwined with the chilling uncertainty of the forest, creating a complex web of desire and fear. He resolved to protect Asya and his friends, hoping that someday, when the shadows lifted, he might find the courage to reveal his heart. The group of tourists stood at the edge of a cliff, the breathtaking landscape stretching out before them in a patchwork of lush forests, shimmering lakes, and rolling hills. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine and earth. Birds circled lazily overhead, and the distant sound of a waterfall mingled with the rustling leaves, creating a symphony of nature. As the group marveled at the view, they began to discuss their impressions. "This place is incredible," said Anna, her voice filled with awe. "I've never seen anything like it. We need to take some pictures." Others nodded in agreement, pulling out their cameras and phones. They started snapping shots of the panorama, trying to capture the beauty before them. The excitement was palpable, everyone eager to immortalize the moment in pixels. Nikita, however, stood slightly apart from the group, his expression thoughtful. He watched as his friends busied themselves with their devices, a hint of a frown creasing his brow. After a moment, he stepped forward and raised his voice just enough to be heard over the chatter and clicking shutters. "Guys, I know this view is amazing, but maybe we should take a moment to really enjoy it," he suggested. "Sometimes we get so caught up in capturing the perfect shot that we forget to actually experience the moment." The group paused, looking at Nikita with a mixture of surprise and contemplation. He continued, his voice softer but carrying a weight of sincerity. "Think about it. We spend so much time trying to preserve memories that we miss out on living them. Let's just be here for a while. Feel the wind, listen to the sounds, breathe in the air. Let this place leave an imprint on our hearts, not just on our screens." There was a moment of silence as his words sank in. Slowly, one by one, they put away their cameras and phones, turning their attention back to the landscape. They stood quietly, taking in the scene with all their senses, allowing the beauty of the place to wash over them. As they did, a subtle unease began to creep into the atmosphere. The natural sounds of the forest, once soothing, now seemed to carry an undercurrent of something more sinister. The rustling leaves whispered secrets, and the distant waterfall's roar seemed to conceal hidden dangers. The sun, though still bright, cast long shadows that stretched and twisted in unnatural ways. Nikita's words had shifted the focus from the external to the internal, and with it came a heightened awareness of their surroundings. Each creak of a branch and rustle of foliage felt amplified, as if the forest itself was watching, waiting. The tourists couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone, that something unseen lurked just beyond their vision, observing them with silent intent. The picturesque view, once a source of joy and wonder, now held a disquieting edge. The group huddled closer together, instinctively seeking comfort in each other's presence as they continued to take in the beauty around them. But beneath the surface, a primal fear had been awakened, casting a shadow over the serene landscape. As twilight descended over the forest, the group began preparing for dinner. The air was filled with the rich aroma of pine and the earthy scent of damp leaves. Artyom and a few others busied themselves collecting firewood, their arms laden with dry branches and logs. Nearby, a makeshift grill had been set up, and slabs of marinated meat were being carefully arranged on skewers. The crackling of the growing fire provided a comforting background sound as the flames licked at the wood, casting a warm glow over the campsite. Shadows danced across the faces of the friends, making their features appear both familiar and oddly distorted. The growing darkness lent an eerie quality to the surroundings, as the forest seemed to close in around them. Ace, always the one to add a touch of elegance to their adventures, emerged from the tent with a mischievous smile. In her hands she held 2 bottles of wine. "How about we make this evening a bit more special?" she suggested, her voice carrying a playful yet inviting tone. She lifted the bottles, their glass surfaces catching the firelight and reflecting it in shimmering patterns. A toast to friendship and unforgettable memories. The group cheered in agreement, their spirits lifted by the promise of a more festive atmosphere. They gathered around the fire, the flickering light casting long shadows that seemed to writhe and twist in the encroaching darkness. Glasses were filled, and the clinking of toasts mingled with laughter as they settled into a comfortable camaraderie. As the meal progressed, the mood grew lighter, and the wine flowed freely. Artyom, however, seemed unusually quiet, his gaze often drifting toward Ace with an intensity that was hard to miss. He stood up suddenly, his movements deliberate yet filled with a nervous energy. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, his voice cutting through the din of conversation. "I have something I need to say." The group fell silent, turning their attention to Artyom with a mixture of curiosity and surprise. He gestured for Ace to join him, leading her a short distance away to a beautifully arranged area. Earlier in the day, he had secretly decorated this spot with wildflowers and soft candlelight, creating an intimate and enchanting setting amidst the untamed wilderness. Ace's eyes widened in astonishment as she took in the scene. "Artyom, what is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Taking a deep breath, Artyom dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and apprehension. "Ace, from the moment I met you, I knew you were someone special. You've brought so much joy and adventure into my life. Will you marry me?" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The crackling fire, the rustling leaves, and even the distant sounds of the forest seemed to fade into silence. Ace's expression shifted from surprise to something more complex. She took a step back, her face shadowed by the flickering firelight. "I'm sorry, Artyom," she said slowly, her voice trembling. "I can't." The silence that followed was deafening. Artyom's heart sank, his hopeful expression crumbling into one of shock and despair. The rest of the group, who had been watching from a respectful distance, exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier joy now tainted by an undercurrent of tension. As Ace turned away, a sudden chill seemed to permeate the air. The firelight flickered ominously, and the surrounding darkness pressed in closer. The once lively forest now felt foreboding, its shadows hiding unseen threats. Artyom remained kneeling, the velvet box still open in his hand, the ring inside glinting coldly. An uncomfortable silence settled over the group, broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire. The joyous evening had taken a dark turn, leaving everyone with a sense of unease. As the night wore on, the forest seemed to grow darker and more oppressive, the once welcoming shadows now filled with unknown dangers. As the crackling fire cast dancing shadows over the campsite, Artyom's heart pounded in his chest. The warmth of the flames was a stark contrast to the cold knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He had spent the entire day preparing for this moment, meticulously planning every detail, yet nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. He rose from his seat, brushing the dirt from his jeans, and cleared his throat. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for a moment," he called out, his voice steady but laced with a nervous tremor. The group fell silent, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Artyom turned to Ace, his eyes locking with hers. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the velvet box in his pocket. "Ace, you mean the world to me. We've shared so many incredible moments together, and I can't imagine my life without you. So, I have something important to ask." With that, he dropped to one knee, the forest around them seeming to hold its breath. He pulled out the small box and opened it, revealing a delicate ring that sparkled in the firelight. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice filled with hope and love. The group gasped softly, their eyes widening in surprise and delight. All eyes were on Ace, waiting for her response. But instead of the joyful acceptance Artyom had envisioned, her face contorted in an expression of shock and discomfort. She took a step back, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm sorry, Artyom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't." A stunned silence enveloped the campsite. Artyom's smile faltered, his face paling as the weight of her words sank in. He remained kneeling, the ring still held out before him, his heart shattering with each passing second. The cheerful atmosphere turned somber, a cold wind seeming to blow through the clearing, chilling everyone to the bone. The rest of the group exchanged uneasy glances, the joyous evening now marred by confusion and tension. The once comforting shadows of the forest now seemed to loom ominously, as if the trees themselves were leaning in to witness the unfolding drama. Artyom slowly rose to his feet, his mind reeling. But why, he stammered, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire. I thought. Ace shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she repeated, her voice breaking. I just can't. It's not the right time. Or maybe it's not the right thing. I don't know. The group shifted uncomfortably, their earlier laughter and camaraderie now replaced with a heavy sense of awkwardness. The fire crackled louder in the oppressive silence, the forest around them seeming to close in. Artyom's mind raced, searching for something to say, something to do to change her mind, but he found himself paralyzed by a profound sense of loss and disbelief. He had never anticipated this response, this rejection that now hung in the air like a dark cloud. As the night deepened, the forest shadows grew longer and more sinister. The once serene and picturesque setting now felt menacing, the trees whispering secrets to each other, the darkness filled with unseen eyes. The group, once bonded by their shared adventure, now felt a creeping unease that settled deep in their bones. The evening, meant to be a celebration of love and unity, had taken a dark and unexpected turn. As the fire slowly died down, casting ever fainter light, the group huddled closer together, seeking solace in their shared presence. Yet the sense of dread lingered, the forest around them seeming to come alive with malevolent intent. The night promised to be long and fraught with the unspoken fears and uncertainties now haunting their thoughts. The fire's embers glowed dimly as Artyom and Ace stood apart, their faces etched with a tumult of emotions. Artyom's heart was a storm of hurt and confusion, each beat echoing with the pain of Ace's unexpected refusal. Tears glistened in Ace's eyes, her own turmoil evident as she struggled to articulate the reasons behind her rejection. The warmth of the fire did little to comfort them, its flickering light casting long, ghostly shadows across their faces. Artyom felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Nikita, his friend's face a mask of concern and solidarity. Hey man, let's take a walk, Nikita suggested softly, steering Artyom away from the group. They wandered a short distance from the camp, the darkness of the forest swallowing them as they moved beyond the fire's reach. The cool night air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Crickets chirped unseen, their persistent song the only sound breaking the silence. Nikita glanced at Artyom, his eyes searching his friend's face for any sign of solace. I know this is hard, Artyom. I'm really sorry about what happened. Artyom nodded, his throat tight with unshed tears. I don't understand. I thought we were ready for this. Nikita sighed, pausing to lean against a tree. Sometimes things don't go the way we plan. But you have to be careful. You need to protect yourself. Artyom frowned, confusion mingling with his sorrow. What do you mean? Nikita's eyes darkened, his expression becoming serious. I mean, there's something off about this whole situation. Something doesn't feel right. You need to watch your back. The tension between them grew palpable, the shadows around them seeming to deepen. Artyom's eyes narrowed, irritation flaring. What are you talking about? Ace just turned me down, that's all. Nikita shook his head, his voice dropping to a hushed whisper. It's more than that. I've seen things, Artyom. Heard things in the woods. There's something here, something dangerous. I don't think it's a coincidence that all this is happening now. Artyom's anger sparked, cutting through his sadness. You're being paranoid. You're just trying to find a reason for what happened. Sometimes things just don't work out. Nikita stepped closer, his voice urgent. No, you don't understand. There's a presence in these woods. I felt it earlier, and I think it has something to do with Ace's decision. You need to trust me. Artyom shook his head, frustration boiling over. I can't deal with your conspiracy theories right now, Nikita. I need to figure out what went wrong with Ace, not chase after imaginary threats. Their voices rose, echoing through the trees, the forest seeming to close in on them. Nikita grabbed Artyom's arm, his grip firm. Listen to me. You have to be careful. Something dark is out here. I can feel it. Artyom yanked his arm free, his eyes blazing with anger. Stop it, Nikita. Just stop. You're not helping. They stood there, staring each other down. The silence between them now a chasm filled with unspoken fears and unresolved tensions. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the trees looming like silent sentinels. Finally, Nikita stepped back, his face hardening with resolve. Fine, Artyom, but don't say I didn't warn you. Be careful, for all our sakes. Artyom watched as Nikita turned and walked away, his silhouette swallowed by the darkness. Left alone, he felt the weight of the night pressing in on him, the sense of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart, but the unease lingered, a constant reminder of the fear that now tainted the once beautiful evening. The night had grown colder, the chill seeping into Artyom's bones as he trudged back to the camp. The earlier tension with Nikita weighed heavily on his mind, a gnawing unease that refused to dissipate. The fire still crackled, its light flickering weakly against the oppressive darkness of the forest. A sat apart from the group, her face turned away, lost in her own thoughts. Nikita approached Artyom again, his expression a mix of frustration and determination. "We need to talk," he said firmly, his voice low but intense. Artyom sighed, rubbing his temples. "What now, Nikita? Can't we just drop it?" "No, we can't," Nikita snapped, his eyes blazing. "I think you brought this on yourself. You pushed Ace too hard, too fast. Maybe that's why she said no." Artyom's anger flared anew, his hands clenching into fists. "What are you talking about? I thought she was ready. We both did. You have no right to blame me for this." Nikita stepped closer, his face inches from Artyom's. "You don't see it, do you? You've been so focused on your own plans that you ignored what Ace might really want. This whole thing might have driven her away." Artyom's temper snapped, his grief and frustration boiling over. "That's not fair, Nikita. You don't know what you're talking about. You weren't there when we talked about our future." The argument escalated, their voices rising as the rest of the group looked on, unease growing in the pit of their stomachs. The shadows seemed to grow darker, the forest pressing in on them with an almost sentient menace. "Stop pretending you know everything," Nikita shouted, shoving Artyom's shoulder. "You're so wrapped up in your own world that you can't see what's happening around you." Artyom pushed back, his fury matching Nikita's. "And you're just paranoid, seeing threats where there are none. This isn't about some mysterious presence in the woods. This is about you not trusting me or Ace." The confrontation became physical, their pent-up emotions spilling over into shoves and grappling. They stumbled, their movements wild and uncoordinated, driven by anger and hurt. The forest seemed to close in around them, the fire's light casting long, sinister shadows. Nikita's fist connected with Artyom's jaw, sending him sprawling to the ground. Artyom retaliated, tackling Nikita, their struggle turning desperate and raw. The rest of the group rushed to intervene, pulling them apart, their faces pale with fear and concern. "Enough," shouted one of their friends, stepping between them. "This isn't helping. You're both just hurting each other." Panting and bruised, Artyom and Nikita glared at each other, the firelight reflecting in their eyes. Slowly, the reality of their actions sank in, the anger giving way to shame and regret. They stood, swaying slightly, their vulnerability stark against the dark backdrop of the forest. "I'm sorry," Nikita muttered, his voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to blame you. I'm just scared. Something feels wrong, and I don't know how to handle it." Artyom nodded, wiping blood from the corner of his mouth. "I know. I'm scared too. But taking it out on each other won't help. We need to stick together." The two friends shared a moment of understanding, the raw honesty of their emotions breaking through the tension. They embraced awkwardly, their anger melting into a fragile truce. The group watched silently, the fire crackling softly in the background. The forest, still and silent, seemed to hold its breath, the shadows receding slightly, as if acknowledging their newfound unity. Yet the sense of unease lingered, a reminder of the unknown dangers that might still lurk in the darkness. The night was far from over, and the true test of their resolve had yet to come. The campfire crackled weakly as the tension in the air grew thick and oppressive. The unease that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted into a full-blown conflict. Artyom and Nikita, both on edge from their earlier confrontation, faced off once more, their faces contorted with anger and frustration. "You're not listening to me," Artyom Nikita hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "Something is seriously wrong here, and you're just brushing it off like it's nothing." Artyom's eyes narrowed, a cynical smile twisting his lips. "And you're letting paranoia control you. We came here to relax and enjoy ourselves, not to jump at shadows and ghost stories." Nikita's fists clenched, his knuckles white. "It's not paranoia. I've seen things, heard things. You're too blind to see the danger right in front of us." Artyom stepped closer, his demeanor shifting from defensive to menacing. "You know what, Nikita? Maybe you're the problem. You're so obsessed with finding threats that you're creating them. Maybe Assi said no because she saw what a paranoid wreck you are." Nikita's face reddened with rage. "Don't you dare bring Ace into this. You're the one who pushed her away with your incessant need for control and perfection." The other campers watched in stunned silence as the argument escalated. Artyom's cold, calculated words cut deep, while Nikita's aggression grew more palpable, his body tensing like a coiled spring ready to snap. "I should have known you would turn this around on me," Artyom sneered. "You're always looking for someone to blame, someone to fight. Maybe that's why you can't hold on to anything good in your life." With a roar of fury, Nikita lunged at Artyom, their bodies colliding in a flurry of punches and grappling. The physical altercation was fierce and brutal, each blow landing with a sickening thud. The forest seemed to close in around them, the shadows deepening, as if feeding off their animosity. "Stop it," both of you, one of their friends shouted, trying to pull them apart. But the effort was futile, the two men locked in a deadly dance of rage and resentment. Artyom's face twisted with a cruel smirk as he gained the upper hand, pinning Nikita to the ground. "See? This is who you are, Nikita, a violent, paranoid mess." Nikita struggled beneath him, his eyes burning with a mixture of anger and desperation. "And you're a manipulative bastard who can't stand not being in control." The accusations hung in the air, the firelight casting eerie shadows on their contorted faces. The forest seemed to echo with their harsh words, the night itself growing darker and more sinister. Finally, the others managed to separate them, each man breathing heavily, bruised and bloodied. The raw intensity of the fight left a palpable tension lingering in the air, their characters laid bare in the aftermath of violence. Artyom, usually composed and calculating, had shown a side of himself that was harsh and cynical, his need for control driving him to cruelty. Nikita, often the voice of caution, had been consumed by his fears, his aggression turning him into a menacing figure. As they stood apart, the reality of their actions began to sink in. The forest, silent and foreboding, seemed to watch them with unseen eyes. The friends who had once bonded over shared adventures now faced a rift that threatened to tear them apart. The night's eerie calm was shattered by their conflict, the shadows around them whispering of unseen dangers and untold horrors. The forest's oppressive silence felt like a warning, a prelude to something far darker lurking just beyond the fire's reach. In the flickering firelight, their vulnerabilities were laid bare, their true natures revealed in the heat of the moment. The campfire, once a beacon of warmth and camaraderie, now seemed a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. The characters, shaped by their inner demons and external threats, stood on the brink of a deeper, more terrifying journey into the unknown. As the tension crackled in the cold night air, Artyom and Nikita glared at each other, their breaths coming in harsh, ragged bursts. The flickering fire cast long shadows, twisting their features into grotesque masks of anger and hurt. The other campers, still reeling from the brutal fight, watched in tense silence, unsure of what would happen next. Artyom took a deep breath, his face hardening with resolve. "There's something you need to know, Nikita," he said, his voice low and steady. "I've been using neuroleptics to keep you in check." The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap, shocking everyone into stunned silence. Nikita's eyes widened in disbelief, his fists clenching at his sides. "What the hell are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice shaking with fury. Artyom's expression was grim. "You were spiraling, becoming more and more paranoid. I thought it was the only way to help you, to keep you from losing control." You drugged me. Nikita's voice was a low growl, his anger barely contained. You had no right. You violated my trust, my autonomy. Artyom's eyes flashed with a mix of regret and defiance. It was for your own good. You were becoming a danger to yourself and to us. I had to do something. Nikita's hands trembled with rage, the betrayal cutting deep. You had no right to decide that for me, he said, his voice cracking. You played with my mind, my life. Artyom pulled out his smartphone, his grip tight and knuckles white. And it wasn't just that he continued, his tone colder. I have proof. Proof of your betrayal. He tapped on the screen, bringing up a video. The others leaned in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and dread. The video played, showing a hidden camera's view of Ace and Nikita in a compromising situation. The intimate whispers, the stolen touches. It was undeniable evidence of infidelity. Nikita's face drained of color, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. What is this, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Artyom's gaze was piercing. You betrayed me, Nikita. You and Ace. You think I didn't notice the looks, the late-night conversations? I recorded this to prove it to myself, to confront the truth. The psychological impact of the video was immense, the campfire's light casting eerie shadows as the reality of the betrayal sank in. The other campers shifted uncomfortably, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them. Nikita's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. I didn't mean for it to happen, he stammered, tears welling in his eyes. It just did. I was lost, confused. Artyom's expression softened slightly, the anger giving way to a deep, aching hurt. Why, Nikita? Why did you do it? Nikita's voice was choked with emotion. I don't know. I felt so isolated, so afraid. Ace was there, and one thing led to another. I never meant to hurt you. The campfire crackled, the flames dancing as if mocking their pain. The psychological torment of the situation was palpable, the air thick with unspoken emotions and shattered trust. The forest seemed to close in around them, the darkness alive with the echoes of their broken friendship. In the flickering firelight, Artyom and Nikita stood facing each other, their vulnerabilities laid bare. The revelation of the neuroleptics and the video had twisted the knife of betrayal even deeper, leaving raw, open wounds that might never heal. The night grew colder, the oppressive silence of the forest a stark contrast to the tumultuous emotions of the group. The campers, once united by camaraderie and adventure, were now divided by secrets and lies. The true horror lay not in the shadows of the forest, but in the darkness within their own hearts. The campfire flickered, casting ghostly shadows that danced around the clearing, heightening the already tense atmosphere. Artyom's revelation about the neuroleptics and the video played on his phone left a chilling silence in its wake. The other campers looked on, their faces etched with a mix of shock and discomfort, as the weight of Artyom's actions and Nikita's betrayal hung heavy in the air. Nikita stood, trembling, his eyes reflecting a storm of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion. The betrayal he felt was mirrored by the guilt and shame in Ace's eyes, who stood a little way off, her face pale and drawn. Why, Nikita, Artyom's voice was barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a knife. Why did you do it? Nikita's response was choked with emotion, his voice raw. I don't know. I was lost, confused. You were always so controlling, always trying to manage everything, including me. Ace was there, and I felt seen. Artyom's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. Seen? You betrayed me because you felt seen? Do you have any idea what you've done? The feelings of jealousy and despair were palpable, rippling through the group like a physical force. Artyom's mind raced, filled with images of Nikita and Ace together, every touch, every whispered word a dagger to his heart. He had always prided himself on his control, on his ability to manage any situation, but this was beyond his control. The raw, unfiltered emotions roiled within him, threatening to tear him apart. Ace stepped forward, her voice trembling. Artyom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It just did. Artyom's face twisted with pain and rage. Sorry? You're sorry? That's all you have to say? You both tore my heart out, and all you can say is you're sorry. The technological aspect of the situation only added to the horror. The smartphone in Artyom's hand was a symbol of modern surveillance, a reminder of how technology could be used to invade privacy, manipulate, and control. The hidden camera, the neuroleptics, all tools of control that had twisted their relationships and privacy into something dark and grotesque. Nikita's voice broke through Artyom's thoughts. You had no right to record us, to drug me. You were trying to control everything, even my mind. That's not friendship, Artyom. That's madness. Artyom's grip on his phone tightened, his knuckles white. I did what I had to do to protect us, to protect you. But you couldn't see that, could you? You were too busy betraying me. The dialogue crackled with emotional intensity, each word laden with the weight of jealousy and despair. Artyom's mind was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. He had thought he could control everything, but the betrayal had shattered that illusion, leaving him adrift in a sea of anger and pain. The forest around them seemed to close in, the shadows deepening as if feeding off their turmoil. The campfire, once a symbol of warmth and camaraderie, now flickered ominously, casting their faces in harsh, unforgiving light. Nikita took a step forward, his voice raw and pleading. Artyom, we can fix this. We can find a way to move past this. Artyom's laugh was bitter, hollow. Move past this? How? You've destroyed everything. There's no coming back from this. The influence of modern technology on their personal relationships had been profound and devastating. The hidden cameras, the neuroleptics tools that had turned trust into suspicion, love into betrayal. The smartphone in Artyom's hand was a stark reminder of how technology could be wielded as a weapon, cutting deeper than any knife. As the night deepened, the emotional wounds of jealousy and despair were laid bare, their raw edges exposed to the flickering firelight. The campers, once bound by friendship and shared experiences, now stood fractured and broken, their relationships poisoned by betrayal and mistrust. The true horror of the night was not in the shadows of the forest, but in the darkness that had taken root within their hearts, nurtured by jealousy, despair, and the insidious influence of technology. The campfire burned on, its light casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to whisper of further darkness yet to come. The campfire's light flickered weakly against the encroaching darkness, casting eerie, shifting shadows over the clearing. The psychological tension was palpable, weaving through the group like a living entity, tightening its grip on their minds and hearts. Artyom, Nikita, and Ace stood at the epicenter of this storm, their internal battles raging silently, adding layers of complexity and dread to the already fraught atmosphere. Artyom's mind was a chaotic whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and a deep, aching sadness. He had always prided himself on his control, on his ability to navigate any situation with calm precision. But now, he felt that control slipping away, replaced by a raw, primal need for retribution. His thoughts were consumed by images of Ace and Nikita together, each one a fresh wound to his already bleeding heart. Nikita's internal struggle was no less intense. The revelation of Artyom's manipulations, the neuroleptics, the hidden cameras, had shattered his sense of self. He felt violated, his autonomy stripped away by someone he had once considered a friend. The anger simmering within him was tempered by a deep, gnawing guilt over his betrayal of Artyom. He was torn between his righteous fury and the crushing weight of his own culpability. Ace, caught in the crossfire of these conflicting emotions, felt her own heart breaking under the strain. She had never intended for things to spiral out of control like this. Her relationship with Nikita had started as a moment of weakness, a brief escape from the suffocating control Artyom exerted over their lives. Now, it had become a catalyst for destruction, tearing apart the fragile bonds of their friendship. As they stood there, the silence between them thick with unspoken words, AC finally found her voice. "We need to talk about this," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We need to understand why this happened." Artyom's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and pain. "Understand? What's there to understand? You both betrayed me." Nikita stepped forward, his expression a tortured mix of defiance and regret. "Artyom, you need to hear this. Yes, we betrayed you, but you betrayed us too. You used neuroleptics on me. For God's sake, you spied on us, controlled us. That's not friendship." Artyom's face twisted in a grimace of denial and anger. "I did what I had to do. You were out of control, Nikita. I was trying to protect us. Protect us, Nikita's voice rose, filled with incredulous fury. You were trying to protect your own twisted sense of control. You can't justify drugging me, spying on us. That's not protection, that's abuse. Ace took a deep breath, her voice steadying. Artyom, we were all hurting. We all made mistakes. But this is beyond anything we ever imagined. We need to find a way to move forward, to understand each other. The psychological tension was almost unbearable, each word cutting deeper into the raw, exposed nerves of their shared history. The forest around them seemed to close in, the darkness pressing against the flickering light of the fire, mirroring the encroaching despair in their hearts. Artyom's shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions bearing down on him. I thought I was doing the right thing, he murmured, his voice hollow. I thought I was protecting you, protecting us. Nikita shook his head, the anger slowly draining from his features, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. You can't protect people by controlling them, Artyom. We have to trust each other, and you broke that trust. Ace stepped closer to Artyom, her eyes filled with tears. We can still fix this, but we have to be honest with each other. We have to lay everything out in the open. No more secrets, no more lies. The stark honesty of their words cut through the tension, laying bare the raw, unvarnished truth of their emotions and motives. The psychological strain of the evening had brought them to a breaking point, but it was also an opportunity for catharsis, for understanding. The fire crackled softly, a fragile beacon of light in the oppressive darkness. As the three friends stood there, their hearts and minds laid bare, the true horror of the night became clear. It was not the shadows of the forest that threatened them, but the darkness within themselves, the fears and insecurities that had driven them to this point. In the end, it was their willingness to confront these inner demons, to understand and forgive, that would determine whether they could survive the night not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but for the first time they faced it with a shared understanding, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. In the flickering light of the campfire, Artyom's face was a mask of tension. The forest around them was silent, amplifying the crackling of the fire and the uneasy shuffling of his friends. He had been carrying a secret, a burden that now felt too heavy to bear. Asya and Nikita watched him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I need to tell you both something, Artyom began, his voice low but steady. I've been watching Asya. I installed hidden cameras to monitor her. The silence that followed was deafening. Asya's eyes widened in shock, her hand flying to her mouth. Nikita's face darkened with anger, his fists clenching at his sides. The firelight danced across their faces, casting eerie shadows that seemed to mirror the darkness of Artyom's confession. Asya's initial shock quickly gave way to a torrent of emotions. You what she demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could you do this to me? To us? Artyom tried to reach out to her, but she recoiled as if his touch would burn her. I did it because I was afraid, he said, his voice breaking. I was afraid of losing you, of being betrayed. I needed to know the truth. Nikita stepped forward, his face contorted with fury. You're sick, Artyom. You talk about fear, but all you've done is prove that you're the one who can't be trusted. You violated her privacy, her trust, everything. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees looming like silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Asya's eyes filled with tears, her sense of betrayal cutting deeper than any physical wound. Asya took a step back, shaking her head as if trying to wake from a nightmare. Every moment, every private thought ... You watched it all, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. How can we ever come back from this? Artyom's face crumpled with guilt and desperation. I love you, Asya. I did it because I love you, he pleaded, but his words rang hollow, unable to penetrate the wall of hurt and betrayal that now stood between them. Nikita's anger had not abated. Love? This isn't love, Artyom. This is obsession, control, and it's twisted. You need help, he said, his voice hard and unyielding. The atmosphere was charged with tension, the campfire casting long, sinister shadows that seemed to pulse with the raw emotions on display. The trio sat in a strained silence, the crackling of the fire, the only sound in the oppressive night. Asya's trust in Artyom had been shattered, leaving a void filled with hurt and confusion. Nikita's rage simmered just below the surface, his disdain for Artyom palpable. "I can't believe I trusted you," Asya said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've ruined everything. How can I ever feel safe around you again?" Artyom hung his head, the weight of his actions crushing him. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, but he knew that no words could undo the damage he had caused. Nikita stood, his eyes cold and resolute. "This is over, Artyom. Whatever friendship we had, it's gone. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed," he said, turning away from the fire and disappearing into the darkness. Artyom watched him go, feeling the full impact of his betrayal. The forest around them seemed to close in, the once comforting embrace of nature now a suffocating presence. He had not only destroyed his relationship with Asya, but had also driven away his closest friend. The night was silent once more, but the echoes of his confession and the resulting fallout would haunt him for a long time to come. The revelation of Artyom's surveillance had unleashed a storm of emotions, but the psychological repercussions were only beginning to take hold. The campfire's glow cast eerie shadows that danced on the faces of the trio, highlighting the raw tension between them. Asya's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal and violation. The knowledge that her every move had been watched, recorded, and analyzed filled her with a deep sense of unease. Nikita's anger was a palpable force, but beneath it, he too felt the gnawing edges of fear. The idea that someone they had trusted could manipulate and control them so thoroughly was deeply unsettling. Artyom, on the other hand, was consumed by a toxic mix of guilt and desperation. He had thought his actions would bring him clarity and control, but they had only sown chaos and destruction. The psychological pressure mounted, each character feeling the weight of their own emotions and the reactions of the others. Asya's trust in her own judgment was shattered. She questioned every interaction, every moment of vulnerability she had shared. Artyom's confession had planted seeds of doubt and paranoia that grew rapidly, intertwining with her thoughts and emotions. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The forest, once a haven of peace, now seemed to close in on them, its shadows hiding unseen threats. Fear began to take root in their minds, twisting their perceptions and heightening their anxieties. "I can't shake the feeling that we're not alone out here," Asya whispered, her voice trembling. "What if there's more to this than just the cameras? What if he's been watching us all along, everywhere?" Nikita's eyes darted around the darkened woods, his anger momentarily giving way to a primal fear. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice tight. "We can't stay in this place knowing what Artyom has done. It's not safe." Artyom's heart pounded in his chest, the full magnitude of his actions crashing down on him. He had intended to protect what he held dear, but now he saw that his obsession had turned into a weapon against those he loved. "I never meant for it to go this far," he stammered. "I thought I was in control, but now I see how wrong I was." The sense of despair was overwhelming. Asya's fear of being watched had morphed into a fear of the unknown, a dread that extended beyond Artyom's betrayal. Nikita's protective instincts were in overdrive, but he felt powerless against the unseen threats that seemed to lurk in every shadow. The fire crackled on, its light flickering and casting long shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. The night was alive with the sounds of the forest, but to the trio, every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig was a potential danger. Their nerves were frayed, their senses heightened to the point of breaking. "I can't do this anymore," Asya said, her voice breaking. "The fear, the betrayal, it's too much. I feel like I'm losing my mind." Nikita moved closer to her, his presence a small comfort in the overwhelming darkness. "We're going to get through this," he said firmly, though his own voice betrayed his uncertainty. "We have to stay strong for each other." Artyom watched them, a sense of isolation enveloping him. He was the architect of this nightmare, and now he was reaping the consequences. The bonds he had tried to protect were unraveling, and he was helpless to stop it. The psychological toll of his actions was evident in every strained expression, every fearful glance. The night seemed endless, the oppressive atmosphere suffocating in its intensity. The fear and despair that had taken root in their minds grew stronger, feeding off their isolation and vulnerability. The forest, once a place of beauty and solace, had transformed into a realm of shadows and dread, mirroring the turmoil within their hearts. As the hours dragged on, the trio huddled close to the dying fire, each lost in their own thoughts. The betrayal, the fear, and the psychological pressure had forged a new reality for them, one where trust was shattered, and every shadow held a potential threat. The true horror lay not in the physical dangers of the forest, but in the unseen scars left on their minds and souls, forever altering the landscape of their relationships. The campfire had dwindled to a mere flicker, its embers glowing dimly in the encroaching darkness. Asya, Nikita, and Artyom sat in a strained silence, each grappling with their own turbulent emotions. The air was thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Finally, Artyom broke the silence, his voice raw and filled with regret. "I know I've hurt you both deeply," he said, looking first at Asya and then at Nikita. "I can never undo what I've done, but I am truly sorry. I let my fears control me, and in doing so, I betrayed the people I care about most." Asya's eyes shimmered with tears. She had been struggling with her own feelings of betrayal and the invasion of her privacy. She looked at Artyom, her expression a mixture of sadness and resignation. "Your apology. It means something, Artyom. But it's too late to fix what you've broken. The trust is gone, and I don't know if it can ever be rebuilt." Nikita's anger had subsided, replaced by a weary resignation. He had been Artyom's friend for years, but the events of the night had irrevocably changed their relationship. "We can't go back to the way things were," he said quietly. "Your actions have consequences, and some wounds are too deep to heal with just an apology." As the night drew on, the forest around them seemed to echo the emptiness that Artyom felt inside. The once comforting sounds of the night now seemed distant and hollow, mirroring the void that had opened up within him. Asya and Nikita stood up, preparing to leave the campfire and the memories of this night behind. "We should go," Asya said softly, her voice carrying a finality that struck Artyom to his core. "There's nothing left for us here." Nikita nodded, casting one last glance at Artyom. "Take care of yourself, Artyom. I hope you find a way to make peace with what you've done." As they walked away, their figures swallowed by the darkness, Artyom was left alone by the dying fire. The night was silent now, the forest no longer a menacing presence, but a vast emptiness that mirrored his own solitude. He sat there, staring into the embers, feeling the weight of his actions pressing down on him. The emptiness within him was profound. The friendships and love he had taken for granted were now shattered, leaving him in a state of isolation. The forest around him, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, had become a reflection of his inner desolation. The silence was oppressive, a stark reminder of the irreversible consequences of his actions. In that moment, Artyom understood the true horror of what he had done. It was not just the betrayal of his friends, but the isolation he had brought upon himself. The emptiness he felt was more than just the absence of their presence, it was the loss of trust, love, and connection. As the last embers of the fire died out, Artyom sat in the darkness, his heart heavy with regret and loneliness. The tragic turn of events had left him alone, a solitary figure in the vast, uncaring wilderness. The forest, once a place of camaraderie and joy, now stood as a silent witness to his downfall. The emptiness inside him was a void that no apology could fill, a stark reminder of the price he had paid for his actions. The night stretched on and Artyom remained, a solitary soul haunted by the shadows of his own making. As the night deepened, the forest took on an eerie stillness. The campfire had long since died out, leaving Artyom in near total darkness. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a nocturnal animal. Artyom's mind was a tempest of regret and sorrow, but something else began to creep into his thoughts, a growing sense of unease. He sat motionless, straining to listen to the sounds of the night. Then he heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whispering sound, as if the wind itself was speaking to him. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He turned his head, peering into the dark depths of the forest. The sound grew louder, more distinct, and seemed to be drawing closer. A cold shiver ran down his spine as the whispering gave way to a low, mournful moan. It was unlike anything he had ever heard before, and it sent a wave of fear coursing through him. The darkness around him seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and he felt an inexplicable presence watching him. Artyom's rational mind fought to make sense of the sensations overwhelming him. He questioned the nature of the sounds and the presence he felt. Was it simply his imagination, heightened by the night's events and the isolation of the forest? Or was there something more, something otherworldly lurking in the shadows? He recalled the stories he had heard about the forest, tales of strange creatures and spirits that roamed the woods at night. As a child, he had dismissed them as mere folklore, but now, sitting alone in the darkness, he began to wonder if there was some truth to those old legends. The sounds grew more distinct, transforming into a series of rhythmic thuds, as if heavy footsteps were approaching. Artyom's heart raced, his pulse pounding in his ears. He scanned the trees, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was out there, but the darkness was impenetrable. "Is someone there?" he called out, his voice trembling. There was no response, only the continuing thud of footsteps, each one echoing louder than the last. His mind raced with questions. Could it be an animal, or was it something more sinister? The uncertainty gnawed at him, feeding his growing dread. Artyom stood up, his eyes wide with fear and determination. He couldn't sit idle, waiting for whatever was out there to find him. He picked up a sturdy branch, gripping it tightly as he stepped away from the campfire's remnants. Every instinct told him to flee, but his curiosity and the need to confront his fears pushed him forward. He moved cautiously, each step careful and deliberate. The sounds grew louder, more insistent, and he could feel the presence drawing nearer. The forest around him seemed to close in, the trees twisting and looming like silent guardians of a dark secret. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the footsteps ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. Artyom's breath came in shallow gasps, his senses on high alert. He strained to see through the inky blackness, but there was nothing. Just as he was about to turn back, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. It stood at the edge of his vision, barely discernible in the faint light. Artyom's heart pounded as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The figure was humanoid, yet there was something profoundly unnatural about it. It moved with a fluid grace, its form shifting and shimmering as if it were made of smoke. "Who are you?" Artyom demanded, his voice cracking with fear. The figure remained silent, its presence more menacing than any response could have been. Artyom's grip tightened on the branch, but he felt an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. The figure took a step closer, and Artyom's mind filled with doubts and questions. What was this thing? Was it real, or a figment of his imagination? The fear and uncertainty paralyzed him, leaving him standing frozen in the presence of the unknown. In that moment, the full weight of his situation hit him. Alone in the dark forest, surrounded by the echoes of his own fears and the presence of an inexplicable entity, Artyom felt the boundaries between reality and nightmare blur. The figure took another step closer, and Artyom knew that whatever was about to happen, his life would never be the same. Artyom's breath was shallow, his pulse racing as he strained to hear the sounds emanating from the forest. Every rustle of leaves, every distant snap of a twig set his nerves on edge. The forest, which had once been a place of solace and camaraderie, now felt like an ominous entity closing in on him. His senses were heightened, each noise amplified by the oppressive silence. He scanned his surroundings, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The darkness seemed alive, shifting and whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. Fear gripped him, not just an ordinary fear, but a deep, primal terror that gnawed at his sanity. He gripped the branch in his hand, his knuckles white with tension, ready to defend himself against whatever might emerge from the shadows. As the mysterious sounds grew louder, his imagination conjured images of beasts and spirits, horrors that defied logic and explanation. Artyom knew he had to stay vigilant, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring, ready to react. The forest had become a labyrinth of fear, and he was trapped in its heart. In the dim light of the moon filtering through the canopy, Artyom's eyes were drawn to a peculiar sight. Near the edge of the clearing stood an old tree stump, its surface gnarled and twisted as if shaped by ancient hands. At first glance, it seemed like any other stump, but something about it was unsettlingly different. Artyom approached cautiously, each step measured and deliberate. As he drew nearer, he noticed the stump seemed to pulsate with a faint, ethereal glow. It was a subtle light, barely noticeable but undeniably there, casting an eerie aura around the stump. His fear was momentarily overshadowed by a morbid curiosity. The air around the stump was cooler, a sharp contrast to the humid night. Artyom reached out, his fingers trembling as they hovered above the rough bark. He hesitated, sensing a strange energy emanating from the wood. It felt as if the stump was alive, not in a biological sense, but with a presence that defied natural explanation. He stepped back, eyes wide with confusion and awe. The stump seemed to shimmer, and for a moment Artyom thought he saw shapes moving within the wood faces, twisted in expressions of agony and despair. He blinked, and the vision was gone, leaving him questioning his sanity. The mystical aura of the stump filled him with a profound sense of unease. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching him, judging him. The once familiar landscape had transformed into a realm of nightmares, and Artyom was caught in its grasp. The fear that had driven him now intertwined with a deep sense of dread, a realization that he was dealing with forces beyond his understanding. As he backed away from the stump, the sounds of the forest resumed their eerie chorus. Artyom knew that he was not alone, that something ancient and powerful lurked in the darkness, its intentions unknown. The boundaries between reality and the supernatural had blurred, and he was caught in the middle, a solitary figure facing the enigmatic terrors of the night. As the minutes stretched into an eternity, Artyom's mind teetered on the edge of despair. The forest around him, once a familiar and comforting sanctuary, had transformed into a surreal and nightmarish landscape. The boundary between what was real and what was a figment of his overactive imagination blurred, leaving him trapped in a disorienting haze. The whispering shadows, the glowing tree stump, the ominous sounds, they all seemed to belong to a different reality, one that defied logic and reason. Artyom struggled to ground himself, to find a semblance of normalcy, but each attempt only deepened his sense of unreality. It was as if he had stepped into a different dimension, where the rules of nature and sanity no longer applied. He stumbled through the forest, each step heavy with uncertainty. The trees seemed to close in on him, their branches twisting and reaching like skeletal hands. The air grew thick, each breath a struggle as the oppressive atmosphere weighed down on him. The world around him warped and shifted, and Artyom felt as if he were walking through a waking nightmare. The psychological discomfort gnawed at Artyom's mind, a relentless force that eroded his confidence and composure. He couldn't understand what was happening, and the inability to make sense of his surroundings drove him to the brink of panic. The logical part of his brain screamed that there was a rational explanation, but the primal fear that gripped him told a different story. He tried to piece together the events that had led him to this point, but his thoughts were fragmented, scattered like leaves in the wind. The glowing stump, the phantom sounds, the oppressive darkness, they formed a puzzle with no clear solution. His heart raced, his body trembling with a fear he couldn't fully comprehend. Artyom's eyes darted around, searching for something familiar, something that would anchor him to reality. But the forest offered no solace, only more questions and unsettling sights. The whispers seemed to grow louder, more insistent, as if mocking his inability to understand. Every shadow seemed to hide a secret, every rustle a potential threat. The tension was unbearable. Artyom's mind was a storm of conflicting emotions: fear, confusion, desperation. He felt like a marionette, pulled by unseen strings, dancing to a tune he couldn't hear. The psychological discomfort was overwhelming, a relentless pressure that threatened to crush his spirit. In the midst of this turmoil, Artyom stumbled upon a small clearing. For a brief moment, he felt a flicker of hope, a chance to catch his breath. But as he stepped into the open space, the ground beneath him seemed to shift, and he nearly lost his balance. The dissonance between what he saw and what he felt was jarring, a stark reminder that he was caught in a reality that defied understanding. His gaze fell upon another tree stump, similar to the first, but even more grotesque. Its surface seemed to writhe, the wood contorted into twisted shapes that resembled anguished faces. Artyom's skin crawled as he watched the stump, half expecting it to come to life. The sense of being watched, judged, was almost palpable. The psychological discomfort reached its peak as Artyom realized he was completely alone in this nightmare. The forest had become a living entity, a dark and malevolent force that toyed with his mind. He was a prisoner of his own fears, caught in a web of unreality and despair. The forest had claimed him, and there was no escape. The scene was set with an atmosphere of palpable tension and mystery. Artyom's struggle to discern reality from illusion added layers of fear and unease. His journey through the forest was not just a physical one, but a psychological descent into the unknown. The despair and unreality of his situation painted a chilling picture, leaving both Artyom and the reader questioning what was truly real in this haunting and nightmarish landscape. The atmosphere in the forest thickened with an almost tangible sense of intrigue and mystery. Artyom's mind raced with questions, each more unsettling than the last. What was this creature that seemed to haunt the woods? What were its intentions? The sounds that drifted through the trees, the eerie glow from the stump, all pointed to something beyond his understanding. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for Artyom to make the next move. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind, carried a weight of foreboding. Artyom felt as though he was being watched, scrutinized by unseen eyes. The darkness around him was no longer just an absence of light, but a presence in its own right, filled with secrets and dangers. His thoughts churned with speculation. Was this creature a guardian of the forest, a vengeful spirit, or something far older and more malevolent? The uncertainty gnawed at him, each unanswered question intensifying his fear. The forest was a puzzle with missing pieces, and Artyom was trapped in its enigmatic embrace, desperate to understand yet terrified of what he might discover. As Artyom stood near the grotesque stump, a profound and terrifying transformation began to unfold before his eyes. The ordinary tree stump, twisted and gnarled, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. A low, ominous hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground and into Artyom's bones. He watched in horrified fascination as the wood began to shift and contort. The bark split open with a sickening crack, revealing an inner core that glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. The once solid wood twisted and stretched, forming grotesque limbs and a distorted, malevolent face. The creature emerged slowly, as if waking from a deep slumber, its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowing with a cold, predatory intelligence. Artyom's heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The creature, no longer bound by the form of a tree, towered over him, its presence exuding a palpable menace. The air grew colder, the darkness around them seeming to thicken and press in. Artyom felt a surge of primal fear and despair. This was no mere hallucination, it was a waking nightmare. The creature moved with a fluid grace, each motion deliberate and threatening. Artyom's legs trembled, his instincts screaming at him to run, yet he stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear his eyes away. The transformation was complete. The forest had birthed something monstrous and ancient, a being of wood and shadow, driven by unknown motives. In that moment, Artyom's fear reached a crescendo. The creature's presence was a waking horror, a manifestation of everything he had feared and more. Despair clawed at him as he realized he was utterly alone against this monstrosity. The forest had become a place of death and despair, and Artyom was its latest victim. The scene was drenched in tension and dread, each detail meticulously crafted to heighten the sense of mystery and terror. The transformation of the stump into a living nightmare served as a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Artyom's journey into the heart of the forest had awakened an ancient horror, and his struggle for understanding had only led him deeper into the darkness. In the face of the monstrous creature that had emerged from the tree stump, Artyom felt a surge of adrenaline-fueled defiance. Despite the overwhelming fear gripping him, he couldn't simply succumb to this nightmare without a fight. Summoning every ounce of courage, he reached for the nearest fallen branch, wielding it like a makeshift weapon. With a shout that echoed his desperation, Artyom swung the branch at the creature. The blow landed with a dull thud, but the creature barely flinched. Instead, it seemed to grow more animated, its grotesque limbs moving with an unnatural fluidity. Artyom struck again and again, each effort more frantic than the last, but his attacks were futile. The branch shattered in his hands, splintering into useless fragments. The creature responded with terrifying swiftness. One of its limb-like appendages lashed out, striking Artyom with bone-crushing force. He was thrown back, crashing into the ground with a painful jolt. The wind was knocked out of him, and stars danced in his vision. Pain radiated through his body, but he struggled to his feet, driven by sheer survival instinct. As Artyom staggered upright, the full horror of his situation crashed down on him. The creature loomed closer, its eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. Each step it took seemed to resonate with the finality of death. Artyom's mind raced, but there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The forest, once a place of solace, had become a labyrinth of terror with no escape. He stumbled backward, his movements clumsy and disoriented. The creature advanced relentlessly, a silent harbinger of doom. Artyom's breath came in ragged gasps, his heart pounding with a frantic rhythm. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but his legs felt like lead, his body paralyzed by fear. The ground seemed to shift beneath him, a dizzying blur of darkness and shadows. In a desperate bid for survival, Artyom turned and ran. The forest blurred around him, branches clawing at his skin as he plunged through the underbrush. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed in protest, but he pushed on, driven by a primal need to escape the nightmare that pursued him. The creature's presence was a constant, terrifying reality, each of its movements a reminder of his impending doom. As he ran, the psychological tension escalated to an almost unbearable level. Artyom's mind was a maelstrom of fear and despair, each thought a jagged shard of panic. He could hear the creature behind him, its steps unnervingly steady and purposeful. The realization of his own helplessness clawed at his sanity, a relentless force that threatened to break him. He glanced over his shoulder, the creature's form a looming shadow against the night. Its eyes, cold and unfeeling, seemed to pierce through the darkness, locking onto him with a predatory gaze. Artyom's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a painful reminder of his vulnerability. The forest around him seemed to close in, the trees twisting into grotesque shapes that mirrored his inner turmoil. The psychological tension was suffocating. Artyom felt the weight of his own mortality pressing down on him, a crushing certainty that he could not escape. The creature was a manifestation of his deepest fears, a living nightmare that had sprung from the depths of the forest to claim him. Each step he took felt heavier than the last, the ground beneath him seeming to drag him down into an abyss of despair. In the end, the struggle for survival became a test of endurance. Artyom's body and mind were pushed to their limits, the relentless pursuit of the creature driving him to the brink of collapse. The forest had become a prison, its shadows and whispers a constant reminder of his plight. The psychological tension reached its peak, leaving Artyom teetering on the edge of sanity, his every thought consumed by the terror that hunted him. The scene painted a harrowing picture of desperation and fear. Artyom's futile attempts at resistance, his desperate flight through the forest, and the relentless psychological pressure combined to create a chilling narrative of survival against an unstoppable force. The forest, once a place of peace, had transformed into a realm of nightmares, with Artyom caught in its merciless grip. Artyom's heart raced as he desperately sought a way to save himself from the monstrous wooden creature. Every movement, every thought, was clouded by the looming inevitability of death. His mind raced through possibilities, searching for a way out, but each option was swiftly closed off by the creature's relentless advance. Panic surged through him, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he realized the futility of his efforts. With trembling hands, Artyom fumbled for anything that could be used as a weapon. His fingers closed around a jagged rock, and he turned to face his assailant. The creature, its form twisted and grotesque, loomed over him with a chilling indifference. Artyom's voice caught in his throat as he raised the rock, his knuckles white with tension. He struck out, driven by a desperate hope that somehow, against all odds, he could fight back. But the moment of defiance was short-lived. As the rock struck the creature's gnarled surface, it merely glanced off, leaving Artyom exposed and vulnerable. In that moment, a strange calm washed over him, a resigned acceptance of his fate. The fear that had gripped him with iron claws began to ebb, replaced by a surreal calmness in the face of impending death. He looked into the creature's eyes, seeing not malice but an eerie serenity, as if it were an inevitable force of nature. Time seemed to slow as Artyom stood there, his mind strangely clear amidst the chaos. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable conclusion. His senses heightened, he felt the cool breeze against his skin, heard the rustling of leaves overhead. It was as if the world itself acknowledged the tragedy unfolding. With a sudden, swift movement, the creature struck. One of its massive limbs swung down with terrifying speed, crushing Artyom beneath its weight. The impact was devastating, pain exploding through his body as he was thrown to the ground. Blood mingled with dirt and leaves, a grim testament to his futile struggle. The forest echoed with a haunting silence, broken only by the sound of Artyom's labored breaths. As consciousness faded, Artyom's gaze turned upward toward the canopy of trees. The world around him blurred, colors merging into darkness. His thoughts drifted, memories flashing before his eyes like scattered fragments of a shattered mirror. He had fought, he had resisted, but in the end, it was all in vain. The creature had claimed him, its terrible presence marking the tragic finality of his journey. And then, with a final sigh, Artyom's body went still. The forest reclaimed its silence, swallowing his form into its depths. The scene bore witness to a chilling narrative of struggle and loss, where the protagonist's valiant efforts were eclipsed by the merciless inevitability of his demise. In the end, there was only the cold embrace of the forest, and the lingering echoes of a life cut short by forces beyond comprehension.